On today's special episode of Homeworthy, we're bringing you to upstate New York for a look inside some of the most breathtaking homes, each with its own unique story, character, and impeccable style. First, we'll explore a 200-year-old farmhouse that was reimagined to feel timeless yet thoroughly modern. Then, we'll tour Oz Farm, the stunning 82-acre equestrian and events ranch of Jenny Oz Leroy. Hailing from a long lineage of Hollywood royalty, Jenny's ranch is packed with incredibly special family mementos. Later, we step inside a church that has been converted into a beautifully spacious home filled with history and secondhand treasures. Finally, we'll visit a country estate with gorgeous floor-to-ceiling windows that emphasize the incredible mountain view. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Louise. I am excited to show you one of my client projects here in the Hudson Valley. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, my name is Louise Copeland. I am an interior designer, and I'm excited to be here today at our client's house in Germantown, New York. It's a historic Gothic revival home that was built, we think, between 1820 and 1840. When the first time I came to the house to meet with the clients, we were with the architect who helped with the project, Chip Bull from Bull Architects. And the original scope of the project was to add a kitchen to a house that had been renovated and renovated and renovated. And it was sort of just a rabbit warren of rooms that didn't flow very well. It was not at all the original layout of the house on the inside. And the scope sort of went from there. We decided to put the kitchen on the other side of the house to add an addition. We wanted a proper primary suite that the house didn't have at the time. And the real goal for the original part of the house was to bring it back to what we thought was the original layout of the house. One of the most wonderful things about the client is that aesthetics are very important to them, and they understand the value of not just having it function, but having it be closer to the original aesthetic of the house. So that was a really fun partnership to have, because that's not always the case. Welcome to the entry of the house. When we first started the project, there was a wall right here. And so it was just this little dark entryway with the original door that we kept and the original glass, which we repaired. One goal we had in the house was to not have really any exposed sheetrock because it feels too new. So we actually put new sheetrock up on the walls and then painted burlap onto it, glued burlap, and then painted over it. So you can see the walls have just really uneven, kind of rough texture, very imperfect, which is actually what we wanted because we didn't want it to feel too crisp and new. The staircase is original. It is very steep and very narrow. We didn't really think about it when we were moving furniture upstairs. Most of the furniture actually would not fit up the stairs, so we had to take a lot of it apart and put it back together upstairs. So hopefully it stays here for a long time. This was a wall right here. So the original entry of the house would have been here. Actually, it would have been sort of the back door, and it was a window when we started construction. So we put the door back in because this would have been the main pass-through of the house. Out this way is the Hudson River, so it's a really beautiful view. even though you drive in on this side, this is actually the front of the house that faces the river. The architect was really involved in this part of the house because he's worked on a lot of these Gothic revivals. Chip is so wonderful and had really wanted to open this up to make it feel like the original house would have felt. This is, as you can see, the staircase is right above here. There was nothing we could do about this height. It is quite low, but it sort of adds to the character of the house. This is how it would have been almost 200 years ago, so we left it just like that. One thing that I really like to do most of the time in an entry to the house is keep it pretty light and neutral, because it allows for the spaces that come off of the entry, which is typically the living room and dining room, to have a lot more punch, a lot more depth of color. I think if you walk into a house and the first thing that you see is like very jarring or very bright or saturated color, it's not always as welcoming. It certainly is a statement, but we like to keep it neutral, and there isn't a ton of natural light in this space, so keeping it light was the right direction. We really wanted to stay true to the spirit of the house. We didn't want to make it perfect with the renovation. We kept some of the wonkiness of the house, so the floors still slope a little bit and the windows maybe aren't exactly lined up, but I think that's really important to keep this character. It feels like an old house, and so we brought in a lot of pieces of furniture that were built around the time the house was built and tried to make it feel a little bit like it'd been collected over time instead of somebody just coming in and plopping all the new furniture into the house. So all the upholstery is new, but has very classic frames, and most of the case goods are antique, and just the textiles are definitely modern, but have a really traditional flair to them. I have to say, I had never worked on an American Gothic house. I immediately bought 10 coffee table books about Gothic architecture. Originally, it was a bit of a challenge to try and strike the right balance for the interiors, but once we sort of figured out the direction we were going, it was really fun, and the clients were so easy and wonderful to work with. So once we got in the groove, it was great. Now I will show you the living room. Welcome to the living room. This is a very large, sort of a primary seating area of the house. And an interesting thing about this room is originally it did not have a fireplace. So we had purchased all of the furniture and we had a completely different layout. Every single thing was just ready to go when the construction was over. And very last minute, the clients decided that they really wanted to have a fireplace to make it a little more warm and cozy. So they put it in, and we had to figure out how to move all of the furniture around to make it work in the space. And I was doubtful that it was going to work, and somehow everything fit perfectly. So the sofa was supposed to be where the fireplace is. Everything was supposed to be in a different corner of the room, and it really worked out well. It was sort of meant to be. In a big space like this, I think it's nice to, when you can, have the sofa up against a wall so it's not floating into the room. It really makes it so you can use all of the space instead of cutting it into two different spaces. So having a room this size, I think having a seat for 10 people is ideal. So whether it's a sofa or a little stool by the fireplace, or even the upholstered ottoman that doubles as a coffee table, it really allows for my clients to entertain a large number of people, and it keeps it really cozy. So you could have a few people over here, or a group over here as well. We used a lot of the Hudson River art in here. This is one of my favorite pieces of the house. Nothing was purchased for a specific place, but again, somehow it just sort of worked out perfectly and everything found the right home for the size and the color. So one big design decision that we made in the house was not to use any recessed lighting. The original owners of the house, of course, would not have had any electrified lighting installed, but we didn't want to have any recessed lights because it just screams new house. So we really stuck to table lamps in here. And actually in the living room, we decided not to have any overhead light. It's a very cozy room and we have a lot of lamp light. We have the sconces over the fireplace, picture lights on this wall, but it just felt like a place that if you're in here during the day, it gets beautiful light from the east in the morning and west in the evening. And then if you're in here after dark, you really kind of want it to feel moody and cozy. So we sort of struck a perfect balance with lots of lamps and kept it, you know, a nice place to be in the evening around the fire. In a space this big, I like to have one large rug covering the space, but there are multiple seating areas. So we decided to have these beautiful vintage rugs that sort of divide the space. So you have your seating area here and your seating area here that are really contained within these beautiful vintage rugs. And we didn't have any wild patterns in here. We wanted to keep it pretty calm and serene. So we instead really mixed up the textures. So we have big chunky bouclés and we have silk and we have leather and linen, and just try to keep it really rich and have a lot of depth in different texture. When we had to reconfigure the space once the fireplace was added, we were trying to find the perfect home for each little table and trunk. And so one thing I like to do in a corner is have a large round side table, because it gives you a nice place to pile books and have a lamp and have a sofa on one side and a chair sort of tucked in next to it. I'm also a big fan, especially in an old house, of having mismatched tables. We have a rectangular table here and a round table here, and as long as they're similar in height and your lamps aren't completely off kilter in height, I think it works really well. These turned walnut table lamps that are gigantic were actually meant for the primary bedroom, and we had them up there during the installation and they were towering over the bed. So we had to find a different place for them. And I think that's the fun of an installation, is things are not always in the exact place that you plan them when you're looking at a floor plan on paper. But again, we found the perfect home for them. I think they're really an anchoring piece in the room because of their size and their color. One of my favorite pieces in the room is this Italian chair from, I think, 1750. So it's older than the house, and it was in pretty rough shape, and it's still pretty beat up, but you would expect it to be, it's very old. And we reupholstered it in this rose tarlo fabric that is very faded on purpose. So it really fits the age of the chair well. One of my favorite rooms in the house is the office. It was the kitchen. So that is where we started, was we were going to just renovate that space to be a better kitchen. And then once we moved the kitchen, that became just an open space, and it's sort of a surprise as you're going down the hall and think you're just going into the sunroom, and then you look left and it's just this beautiful blue and gets really nice light and is a really nice space for the clients to spend some time when they have work to do. All right, so we're coming off of the living room now towards the home office, but I wanted to talk about a few things in here too. This is the original end of the house. So when we started the project, this was already here, but this whole space was the kitchen. And I believe that the sink was right under this window. So it looks quite a bit different now. One thing I love about this is the ceiling drops from the living room. So we sort of embraced the lower ceiling and just painted it black and have these really beautiful Hector Finch lights that have perforation on the side. So at night, it just casts this really beautiful light. And it's a kind of a moody little space going into the office, which is this way. This is the home office. This was the original kitchen, and it's now just a cozy space for our clients to get some work done when they're here. This is an antique desk that we purchased and had it completely refurbished by Revitaleast, where they detail it and change the leather and really bring it back to its original beauty. I get more questions about this space than any other space in the house. Everyone wants to know the paint color, and it really is so soothing and really strikes a nice balance of blue and gray and is calming So it's a great place to get work done. I was lucky that my client had so many beautiful books and vases and collections that sometimes for clients I have to buy things to fill the shelves, but I did not have to buy a single thing. So they have a lot of old family collectibles, and it made it really easy to set it up. No, well, we wanted to have a space that our clients could relax. So it wasn't just a sit at the desk and get a lot of work done. You could sit in here and read or relax. There really almost wasn't space for a chair, but we wanted to squeeze one in because we knew it would get a lot of use. And we wanted to have sconces around the room. I love these sconces from Urban Electric because they fit perfectly on a bookshelf style. And the light here is actually mid-century, so it's really not at all the style of the house, but the ceilings are relatively low and we liked the shape of it. It's just a happy space. Before we leave the office, I wanted to show you this little feature of the room. The clients have 3 boys, and so when they're here working, it can be a little rowdy. So we have these pocket doors we can close to close everyone out. I don't think that the goal needs to be perfection. I think in certain areas of the house that are really functional, that, you know, like a kitchen or a bathroom, you want it to feel really buttoned up. In those spaces, I think it's all about the materials and having them feel authentic to the age of the house as much as you can. But I think that with the interiors, and paint colors and all of the textiles and general aesthetic, it's great not to have everything be exactly perfectly matched, because you would assume that a very old house has been kind of collected over time instead of just designed all at once. So, you know, maybe making the paint color one off from where you think it should be actually has a really, really nice effect. So this is the family room and sunroom of the house. This was actually one of the previous renovations. So the space existed, but it looked quite different. It had this really dated, like large scale tile. It actually had a fountain in the corner. So we took all of that out and just freshened it up a little bit. And the interiors of the space, they feel a little bit different than the rest of the house because it is the family room. This is where the family gathers to watch TV and play games. And so it feels a little bit more casual and maybe a little bit newer. But this really amazing ottoman actually, I believe, was from the Czech Republic. It was a gymnastics training piece, a pommel horse. So it happened to be the perfect size. It's really beat up. It has the original leather. We cleaned it, but it's pretty stained, but it has a lot of character. In the corner here, we have a games table, and the chairs belong to the client's family, and we weren't really sure what to do with them because they're really heavy and kind of dark. And so we decided to just lighten them up with some fresh upholstery that probably would never have actually looked like this, but they really serve a special purpose in here because the family gathers to do puzzles and games. And this table is from a Dorman design in New Orleans. It's a beautiful table. It's one of my favorites. The base is very unique and the finishes are really perfect. And this light finish works really well in this room that gets sunlight all day long. So it's a really bright and airy and happy place. I think that having a casual elegance is really what gives a house its spirit and its soul. These clients have become really good friends, and just seeing how they use the space and how it's really casual and it's loud and there are kids running around and dogs, and it feels very refined, but it feels very lived in. We tried to have the lived in feeling be part of the installation. It never felt too perfect or too precious to really live in, and I think that's important. I think when we started the project, you could really tell, even though the house had been renovated many times and wasn't what the client was looking for as an end result, you could really tell that the owners of the home, the previous owners, had really loved the house. And for how old the home is, I think it's only had 3 owners or something wild. So the people who have lived here really created a space that was great for them, that functioned well for them, and you could really tell that it had been loved over time. So we wanted to carry on that legacy, and I think we did. It was one of the easiest projects in a way because it was fun and we had a great team and just everything sort of fell into place. The client spent the entire time leading up to the installation for years collecting art from the Hudson River School. So a lot of the paintings are products of the area and of the time, and it really adds to the character of the house, makes it feel very authentic. This is the dining room of the home. This was actually all the first pieces of furniture that we purchased were for the dining room. This table I feel like it found us. It is perfect for the space. It was built the same year, the same area of time that the house was built. So it shows its age, but it has a lot of character and it's big for large family gatherings. The chairs, we kept the original leather on. It was in okay shape, but it really, I think, is nice. It keeps with like the spirit and the age of the house. And this is actually one of the only places that we really had to dedicate this space for this piece. This has been in the client's family for a long time, and we were actually supposed to have another opening here out into the hallway to match the one down here, but we had nowhere to put this painting, so we had to create a wall. So the doorway was already framed out, and then we closed it up so we could showcase this really special piece. So the drapery really led the color in the room. It is this beautiful fabric from Alice Sargent. I love her textiles, and I had just been introduced to them when we were working on the house. And so we started with this green color. So we didn't have just blank sheetrock on the walls. We decided to do a lime wash finish from Portola paints, and watching the artisans do it was really amazing because you can't let it dry. Can't, do a coat and let a space dry. So they were going up and down ladders and handing each other brushes and got the whole room done, I think, in an hour. It's really amazing, but it does take a lot of talent. So it's probably hard to see in the drapery, but there are some beautiful pale pink specks in the fabric. And so when we found this piece that had the original pink painting on the back, to showcase all of the clients' dishware and silver collections. It's the perfect size for the space and perfect style, has the original glass, and we were really lucky to find it. And then also this chandelier I think I ripped this out of a magazine years and years ago and never had a dining table big enough to use it. And I reached out to the company and they said that they were no longer making it, but we begged them and they made it for us. And so we were so excited to have it. I think it's the perfect piece for the room. We also painted the ceiling pink in here. This is one of my favorite pinks. It's called Old Country from Benjamin Moore, and it's really the perfect pale pink if it's not going in a child's room because it's not overly saturated and it really is very sophisticated. And I love a painted ceiling, so this felt like a perfect place to put Old Country. I worked for a designer in Jackson, Wyoming after college. I sort of always knew I wanted to do something related to interior design, but it took me a bit of time to find the right path. But I worked on the sales side of the business for a while, which I think was really helpful, learning how the textile and furniture businesses work. The ins and outs of that has really helped me. Once I worked for a designer in New York and then started my own company in San Francisco. Since I've started my company, I've moved from San Francisco to New York and North Carolina. So it's been a fun adventure and had lots of different clients and lots of different styles and projects in different regions of the country. So I think that's really shaped my style and sensibility in the industry. I do something that I tell myself a lot when I sort of get in the weeds with things a bit too much. My old boss and mentor always would say, it's not hearts and lungs, this is supposed to be fun and it's supposed to be beautiful, and don't get bogged down. You're creating a beautiful space for someone. So I try and remind myself that it is serious because it's someone's home and they're the ones who are going to be living in it and enjoying it. And you want to take it seriously, but it's a beautiful profession, so I try and keep it light if I can. So leaving the dining room, this is leaving the original house on this side. So this was the addition that I was involved in helping create for the clients. This is a butler's pantry, so we have a hidden wine fridge and lots of nice storage, upper cabinets for everyday dishware and special glasses, and then hidden behind pocket doors, the more functional pantry, but you know, you want to have the option to close it off when you have company over. And we had an idea of having a tile floor that runs this whole section of the house. So it's also on the other side of the addition to make it seem like this old tiled floor was already here and we kind of put walls on top of it. So it has a lot of character, a really rough texture, and just fits the spirit of the house really well. In the kitchen of the home, we decided to not have a millwork island. So we decided to use a piece of furniture instead. So it didn't look too new and too finished. So this piece I get so many questions about. It was a draper's table from 1840. So again, right around the time of where the home was built, and it really takes a special client to be able to use something like this for an island, because it's just going to get beat up and, you know, it has scratches and it's faded and has stains, but the more you use it, it really has this beautiful patina to it, and it makes the kitchen feel really warm and cozy and not too sterile. And we partnered with Plain English on the cabinetry. This is a company from London. They make the most beautiful cabinetry, and it's the perfect style for an old home because it doesn't look too contemporary. Their hardware has a beautiful finish to it. It looks very aged. Creating this kitchen was so much fun. You know, all of it was the goal of not making it look too new. We didn't have any recessed lights in the plan. We instead used these flush mounts that have sort of a nautical feel to them. And I think it's really fitting given that we're right on the Hudson River. The original homeowner was a sea captain, so bringing in those nautical accents really worked in the house. All of the Plain English cabinetry they have a small collection of really perfect paint colors. This one is called Woolen Flump, I think. It's a very British color, but it sort of reads a little almost purplish beige and really goes nicely with this Arabiscato marble that has a lot of green and brown veining in it. It's a really great combination. And the Lacanche deep green range, again, just going for that sort of old world style. It blends together, and the result we think is pretty great. My favorite thing in the kitchen is the larder pantry. So it looks like it's just built-in cabinetry, but it's actually this really special area that hides the coffee maker and all of the spices and baking needs. And so when you're using the coffee maker, it can be open, and then when you're done, you can close it, and this beautiful mess, it's not really very messy, but it can go away. On the other side of the kitchen, we have this really great family living space. This is the family's most used breakfast table, beautiful banquette for the whole family to pile in and spend time in more casual moments. Having a fireplace in the kitchen is just such a luxury. It's really cozy, and I know that the family uses this space in the house more than anything else. We've added these little benches in front of the fireplace. I know the kids will sit here and have hot chocolate after a cold day outside. And then these chairs, these really snug, beautiful chairs in the corner that are upholstered in indoor-outdoor fabric, so hopefully they'll hold up for a long time, are great for the couple to have coffee in the morning and just sort of catch up and make plans for the day. So when we were building and designing this space, we knew it was going to get a ton of light. It gets great morning light from the east, a lot of light in the evening from the west. So as much as we want the light to come in, we wanted to have the option to sort of filter it. So we use this really beautiful sheer fabric. And on these windows, it's really functional. You can sort of lower one if it has a ray that's sort of hitting someone right in the eye when they're trying to cook or relax. And then over the sink, we have the same fabric, but these are called a Swedish roll-up. So they really are more for aesthetic. They're kind of hard to put up and down, but they do filter the light. They stay at this halfway point and make it so they match the rest of the windows in the room. When we're in the kitchen, you have a clear line of sight into the dining room. So we wanted to bring some of that really rich green into the space. So we decided to go with the window sashes and the exterior doors. All are a deep green to match the range, to match the dining room, so that we could keep the cabinets nice and light. All right, let's head upstairs and I'll show you some bedrooms. In the primary bedroom, we had a lot of masculine colors, so we wanted to take the opportunity in the guest room to make it a little more feminine. So we started with this really beautiful Sister Parish wallpaper and added a pink trim and used very floral, feminine Roman shade fabric from Farron Textiles. This beautiful bed from London, from Cornish Bed Company in the Cotswolds. Lots of really special antiques that sort of naturally fit the room. This beautiful chair that has this sort of peachy suede and a little vanity table for their guests. And then right into this beautiful bathroom that has really amazing green tile that matches the scheme of the room. So the primary suite is all new, part of the addition of the house. And it's a really special room. It has an amazing view of the Hudson. And we wanted to really cozy it up in here. And it didn't really call for any vibrant, heavily patterned wallpaper, but we have this beautiful neutral linen on the walls, and it just gives it such a nice texture and makes it feel really nice and warm. The original bed that we selected for the room, we actually couldn't fit up the stairs. Even taking it apart, it really wasn't going to work in the space. So that's just part of it. Sometimes things don't work out as planned, but it was a happy mistake because we designed this bed that is a 4-poster bed, or I guess a 2-poster bed, sort of similar to the original design, but it's fully upholstered. So the whole thing is covered in this really chunky linen. There are nail heads on the feet, so it has a really nice softness to it, but has the aesthetic that we were originally going for. Clients also, they needed a second workspace other than just the main office of the house. So we found this desk that is a really great size. You could spread out, it's really deep, and it looks out over the backyard into the Hudson in the fall. A really cozy place to work. You can turn the fire on and get the views while you're getting some work done. In creating the space with the architect chipped bowl, we cut out a hallway into the space. So on one side you have the closets, one side you have the bathroom. So there's this long hallway into this space that's at the end of the addition. So it feels very, very private for our clients. They have a full-size sofa in here, so they can really come and relax and escape when they need a moment of quiet or some privacy. We use a lot of textures and try to layer, having linens and wools on the sofa and bouclés. It feels really soft and inviting. I think that home is a place where you want to nest, where you feel like you want to invite people over to show them who you are and how you exist as a family or as a couple or as an individual. It's really a way to sort of showcase your personality. I think home is something different to every client that I've ever had. So I think that the ultimate goal is to create a space that feels authentic to the client. And that's never really the same thing. So some people really want to have it be a place for entertaining. Some want it to feel like a respite, a place where they can go and get away from the outside world. So the meaning of home is different to every client I've ever had. And so our goal is to just try and figure out what that is and make their home the place that they want to be their authentic self. Homeworthy, it's been so fun spending the afternoon with you and showing you one of my favorite client projects here in Germantown, New York. But I have to get back to work, so we'll see you next time. Bye.
Today on Homeworthy, we're taking you to Oz Farm, the stunning 82-acre equestrian and events ranch of Jenny Oz Leroy. Hailing from a long lineage of Hollywood royalty, Jenny is the great-granddaughter of Warner Brothers' Harry Warner and the granddaughter of Mervyn Leroy, producer of The Wizard of Oz. So it's no surprise her ranch is stacked with mementos from her famous family. As a horse lover and hospitality expert with restaurants across the country, Jenny takes us through the grounds, main house, stables, events barn, sunset deck, and more. Enjoy! You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. Before today's episode, click the join button below to support all of the storytelling we do on this channel. Our growing community of members help to directly fund more videos so we can capture these extraordinary homes from around the world. So join today to receive early and exclusive access to new Homeworthy videos.
Hi, Homeworthy. Welcome to Oz Farm. This is the farmhouse. Come on in. So my full name is Jenny Oz Leroy because my grandfather produced The Wizard of Oz, and my family were the Warner Brothers, the creator of Warner Brothers, which is such a great honor. And that's why I named Oz Farm, Oz Farm. There's no place like home. So that's why there's so many great odes to it. People ask me if there's a Yellow Brick Road. We don't have one yet, but we have had a horse named Yellow Brick Road. So there's a lot of history sprinkled out throughout the house and the barn. I like it to be subtle. I'll show you some hints. The barn says Oz on the windows, and people don't always notice that until the end. And I like that instead of it being, you know, in your face, Wizard of Oz. Even though I'm enough in your face, as people would say. This is a Biedermeier table that was my dad and mom's. They imported it from England, so it's one of my favorite pieces. This is a beautiful drawing of our house in the Hamptons. So I grew up out there, and I like to, it makes me think of my childhood. Flowers picked from my own yard, which is so nice. So come on in, see my kitchen. I don't spend that much time in the house. I spend a lot of time out on the farm, which you'll see why. But when I am in here, I'm in this beautiful kitchen. This is a solid piece of wood from one tree that was imported from England. My parents imported this probably in the 70s, and we used to have breakfast and lunch and holiday dinners. So it has a really special meaning to me. These chairs were in the Dakota, in the building that I grew up in. So it's really special to me. If anyone knew who my dad was, you know he was a little wide in the hips. So these chairs were designed for him. So it's really nice to sit and have breakfast here. And there's a little bit of history throughout the whole house. I like to have my new world of Oz Farm with the old world of The Wizard of Oz, which was produced by my grandfather. This is one of the pictures you can see of the apartment that I grew up in, and you can see where the chairs are and where I have a little bit of reflection and an ode to the house that I grew up on. And I try to reflect it here at Oz Farm. So come on, we'll keep going. So we opened this space up last year. There's a lot of rainbows around here. You're gonna see a lot of neon rainbows. There's probably 5 in total. This is one of my favorite. So it's just when you need a little extra happiness in your life, you just flip on the rainbow. So, and we opened this up last year. It's just really, I love the light. It's one of the things I fell in love with this property. And there's just wonderful little odes to my grandfather. Here's a great picture of him with Frank Sinatra, all the different artists and people and creative minds that he worked with over the years. There's another one behind you. You can see him working on a set at some movie, probably in the 40s or 50s, which is really special. So the farmhouse it's for me and my family. We do a lot of cooking outside, and because we live in the Hudson Valley, which we're so lucky, it's so interesting. Growing up in New York City, being in Union Square, all of those things that you go to the Union Square markets, those are all farms from upstate New York. So now having a farmhouse in upstate New York, also a wedding and events venue, that is primarily what Oz Farm does, besides being a horse hotel. So it's compartmentalized. The house, I've really learned to make it for me and my family and loved ones, and little Roxy, my little dachshund puppy. It's important to separate that because we've hosted over 500 weddings at Oz Farm. So there's a lot of cooking that goes on here. We've done vegan weddings, we've done corporate events. We had the largest gathering of defenders in the Northeast 2 years ago. That was incredible. It was 1,500 people, 600 cars, glamping overnight. But this space, I really try to separate it to have for me and my loved ones. And that's why I like having my family and memories around. But a lot of cooking, a lot of fresh items from Story Farm and all the amazing places that are around here. I don't have a garden on property because I love to just go and take all of the things from the natural elements of all the people who are in this area and support the small farmers and things like that. And that's really special. And they are way better farmers than I could be. I'll stick to the parties and hospitality and I'll let them grow the great vegetables. But lots of grilling outside and barbecues, and we're really lucky to live in this area. So although I do keep the farmhouse for my house, I do have an office. I've been known to be a little bit of a workaholic. So let me show you the home office. It has a lot of inspiration from my grandfather, my father, my mother. My mother is an incredible chef. She says as a cook, but even bringing her a cappuccino is a terrifying experience. But anyway, so in this room that we're turning into an office for me, I have some really special things. My grandfather was the horse lover, which is something that a lot of people don't know. He was president of the Hollywood Race Park. So I have all these amazing things. Like this was a silver belt made for him that has the Hollywood, it says Hollywood Walk of Fame, and it has 3 really famous horses that he owned. So he loved horses from a very young age. And these are actually his prints up here and that painting. And if you see this wall, this is a really fun wall. So it's got my grandfather, it's got me and my dad, it's got a wild, this is all the inspiration. This is the wall that I look at when I'm working. Up top is a drawing that was printed in the New Yorker after my father died. And if you see it, it's like he's conducting and having a tree moved, which should be so simple. And that everyone in my family has one of those. And it's just, my dad was that kind of guy, like move the tree. Of course you can move a tree. So it inspires me to go beyond your limits and follow your stars, which is my dad, what he used to say. We also have every memo my father ever wrote, and we are working on a documentary about him, which is really exciting. So I have like probably 50 of these books. So I separated them into different years, and this is, right now I'm in the 2000 year, which is wild because like the internet was happening and my dad was getting into all of that. My New York Post with me with Donald Trump, page 6, it's one of my favorites. So I have that framed. My grandfather's, these were all his binoculars from when he was at the racetrack. So I'm really lucky to have all these amazing pieces. I have something else very special here. My best friend gave me last year, this was one of the first plays my dad was involved in, called Between Two Thieves. So it was really special to get that as a birthday gift. And I will show you some more in the barn, but there are a lot of pictures like this of my father on the set with Dorothy, the Wizard of Oz. So that was my dad, and he was about 5 years old. And So we have a lot of these framed in the barn, which I will show you next. Things like rhinestone microphones. I used to have a rhinestone company. This was made for Jessica Simpson. This was made for Kate Hudson. And yeah, there's just, everything has a history here. It's pretty exceptional. Oh wait, here, look, see? Told you, rainbow, neon rainbow number 2. So now we're going to my favorite part of Oz Farm, which is the horse barn. I would live in the horse barn if it was allowed. And I built this farm this barn in 2008, and it has a really special lounge at the front of it that is called the Velvet Brown Lounge, and I will show you why in 1 second. Show you my favorite part of the barn. I would live in the barn, as I say. I think every horse girl would. So this is the Velvet Brown Lounge. It's named after my favorite horse. She's very special. And the walls have history of so many wonderful things. The most prized possession I have, this is a picture of Elizabeth Taylor, whose name was Velvet Brown in National Velvet, and the horse in the movie was called the Pie. His real name was King Charlie. This is a signed autograph picture to my grandfather from Elizabeth Taylor. So it says, "To Mervyn, love Velvet Brown and the Pie," which, like, as a kid and riding, there was nothing more special. So this is the Pie, the horse that I had. I had him for 18 years. He passed away 2 years ago. He's under a tree at Oz Farm. I can barely even go visit him. He was a little bit of a grump, so if you read this sign, it says, "If you are not Oz, I will bite." My old trainer made that for me. Anyway, so this is, everybody has their own wall. And actually, this wall was going to be shared with another horse, George, and when we did it, these pictures kept falling off the wall, so we realized Pie wanted his own wall. Then we're going to move on to Yellow Brick Road. He was a really beautiful horse that I had. We were very successful at the Hampton Classic. This is, when you win a blue ribbon, you get this, and I never want to lose this, so that's why it's on this wall very safely. And we have his nameplate. And then we have, this wall is George Goes to Hollywood. He was a really special horse. He's also under a tree at Oz Farm. I had him for 18 years. So this is a history wall. We have thousands of photographs of my grandfather. Probably my favorite one is, this is what's called watching the dailies. So this is my grandfather actually, during the filming and making of The Wizard of Oz, reviewing all of the daily films. So legendary. The famous Jack Warner, my great uncle. Most people know him in Hollywood. He was a tough guy. This is him with Alfred Hitchcock. And this is him at the races in Hollywood, at the Hollywood Race Park, and you can see the binoculars that are in my office, and the obviously late great Audrey Hepburn. How can you not have her looking over your farm? So people get pretty excited when they see this wall of fame, and I like to think that it inspires all of us. And these are just some other past horses. This is Zurich. He was really special. He's also buried here under a tree. And most recently, our little guy, Stormy, 32 inches tall, our mascot. We lost him after having him for almost 19 years. And yeah, we're on the hunt for a new mini. So very excited. So let me take you in to see the most important of all, where the horses live. We like to keep it separate so they can have peace and quiet. Because unlike us, they don't need a lot of stimulation all the time. I built the barn in 2008 and wanted it to be very open and airy for the horses. And a lot of the stalls are all on one end, and then everything we do to the horses is on this end so that they can have peace and quiet. So let's go see who's, I think they're having lunch right now. This is Disco, she's my newest. she's a special character. She's taking a nap. They all have fans, insulation. She's getting some good fan time. This is our newest dude of the farm. This is Dash, but his show name is Happy Hour, obviously being in hospitality. He's very friendly. He loves the camera. Come here. Come say hi. So he's 7 years old, and he's my sister's horse. I also ride him. He's really special. Buddy. And he loves when we have events. He loves to grab the guy's boutonnieres. He's really good at that. We didn't teach him that. He just came with it as his own trick. We are headed towards the queen of the farm, Velvet Brown herself, who is just a total superstar and obviously stunningly beautiful. Very well fed. So this is Velvet. She's just she's what you would call my heart horse. She's very special. Everything from, we should sell Velvet hugs. I mean, they're just the smell of her, the things that horses do for you. So, but yes, I've been riding my whole life, and I would spend like an uncomfortable amount of time with her if it was appropriate, but she's sort of like a movie star. She's like, doesn't need, too much attention. So what's really great at Oz Farm is we also host weddings and events here. And when the guests are here, they can see the horses. And then this takes you to the Dorothy barn. So I'll show you that next. You can see, like when we have events, all the horses hang their heads outside. We do cocktail hour out here. Everyone's in their suits. There's music playing. They have champagne. The horses are nuzzling them. They're part of the party, which everybody loves. So this is the Dorothy barn. We started doing events here in 2016. I actually helped renovate it myself with two gentlemen. And when I look back at the pictures of all the weddings, it's so wonderful to see how far our work has come. It was one of the original barns here. And so we have two barns on the property. This is the main one for events. It just has such a charm. It's so warm and beautiful. And this can seat up to 150. There's also a patio that opens up. And we have done this with long tables, with round tables. We've done higher elegant to more farm chic. And I really tried to keep it as neutral as possible so people could put their own spin on it. So when people come to design their event, whether it's a wedding or a birthday party, it really lends itself to whatever people want to add to make it special for their day. So like me, I want disco balls everywhere. So my next party I'm throwing in here is going to be a full disco ball barn dance party. I bought Oz Farm. It wasn't Oz Farm when I bought it. I bought Oz Farm in 2006. It was the year that my brother passed away. I realized at the time that I wanted to wake up and see horses outside my window. And that's just some moment in life that you have that you can't escape once it gets in your head. So in 2006, I bought this farm and I was like, oh, it's so great. I'm so excited, but it needed a lot of work. So I didn't really live here until about 2011 or 12. And I realized I really loved it up here. It was close to New York City. And obviously being born and raised in hospitality, it was a horse farm, but I was like, maybe there's something up here that people want events. So I actually started doing events at other people's property up here from about 2012 to 2014. And then I was like, with all my knowledge and history of events, why not host them at my own farm? So this was the smaller barn on the property. So that's when in 2016 I decided to renovate this and put up a little sign and see what happens. And it totally blew up overnight. We did 13 weddings the first year. And then the second year I did about 48 between on the property and off the property. The farm itself hosts about 25 a year, and we try to keep it at that. Although we have to keep the brides away from, there are a lot of them I could do more if I wanted to, but we have to have a nice balance. So so it's really special. There's not a lot of horse farms that also host events that have horses in the background of our quality, at your cocktail hour. So sometimes there's celebrity horses here who've just won some $1 million class or something, and people get to see them and take pictures with them. So it's very special. This is one of those special pieces. This is a butcher block table that my mother gave me. My mom's English, so that's why we have a lot of stuff from England. So it's really, I mean, you can see that this was really used. So we do wedding cakes on here. Sometimes we open the drawer and do like overflowing flowers. There's all kinds of different content you can see on our website, ozfarmny.com, or Ozfarm Instagram has so many great stories. But we've used this piece in so many different ways. It's very heavy to move, so we like to keep it here. But I'll show you all these doors open up to the patio, which is really nice. Under the stars, twilight, it has such a great feeling to it. A lot of people will do their dinner inside and then dancing out on the patio, which is really special. And of course, every farm needs a vintage farm truck. So I call her the Princess Bride, actually. It's a 1965 F100, 3 on the tree is what people say. That's if you know the lingo. I'm kind of a car girl. So yeah, a lot of the dads want to drive it, and I'm like, you have to be able to drive a 3 on the tree, which is 3 gears on the tree, as they call it. This is our trailer bar. So we converted a horse trailer into a bar, so it's like a welcome station. And then as you follow the little path, you can see the Tin Man, which is a old camper that we converted into a photo booth. So when you come here and you have events, we can put your name on it, all that kind of stuff, and everybody gets the photos at the end of the night. If you don't want to use it, we just convert it into like a really cool lounge, but most people do. Note to the brides though, the photos also come to me. So some of you out there, I have some really good content. You know who you are, and I would never share it, obviously, but I got some pretty fun stuff. So yeah, so we do fire pits out here, but we are working on having more public events here. We're gonna do a rosé all day festival. I really wanna do a pickle festival. That's the food concept that I wanna do. And of course, a Wizard of Oz festival for Halloween is definitely gonna be on the books. My vision is like everybody dressed as Dorothy in all their different Dorothy versions. So now I'd love to show you the rest of the property. There's more with tiny house and sunset deck and where ceremony field is. So we can go check that out. So this space actually between the house and the barn, when I first bought this property, was completely covered in brush. Like, didn't even know that these beautiful rocks were here and these beautiful trees. And it took like a month to clear it out. So this is like our very like zen spot, and I call it Hammockville because we've got the hammocks. And I used to have more hammocks, but I realized I really don't want more than one other person on the hammocks near me at the same time. But it is a really nice, chill spot, and the big, beautiful trees are so pretty. So one of my vintage pieces of Oz Farm is Pinky the golf cart. God, I don't even know how old she is at this point. The brides love her, and she's definitely an Oz Farm OG family member. So we're gonna go visit Sunset Deck and the tree house, which is our tiny house, which is the most magical views at Oz Farm. So jump on in and I'll give you a tour. So here we are at the tree house. It's our original tiny house at Oz Farm. It is, I believe it's only 16 by 9 feet. So no clutter allowed in a tiny house, which we love. And it has the most special views at Oz Farm. So come on in. So I use this space to chill and maybe work a little bit. I have a writing desk in here, so I can move the desk out if I want some inspiration, if I'm working on something. But it's just a place to put your feet up and enjoy the view. There's one picture in here. It's of my grandfather, so it's an inspiration. And of course, more neon rainbows. It has both air conditioning and heating. So during the winter, it's really, really beautiful in here. There is a little bunk for staying overnight. And it's just as simple and beautiful. And we call it the tree house because there's a giant tree, obviously, growing up through the back of it. So we built this ourselves with some help from some local friends that are professionals, obviously. And this view is really what made me leave the big city and live out here. So it has the most amazing sunsets, which is why right over there we have sunset decks. So originally when I bought this farm, this was actually all forest. So we cleared this area and I had this idea to have a PDR, which is a private dining room for you non-hospitality people, out here. And I started to look at all the really special trees on the property because when you have like brush and forest, it's kind of hard to see. So I started to mark off all the big, beautiful trees, which I definitely got from my mother and father, their love for trees. So this tree really stood out. And we decided we wouldn't put the dining room here, but we would build a tiny house because tiny houses became a thing. We wanted something, no clutter, something where we could just sit and gaze out. We've had quite a few fun dance parties out here on this little deck and fire pits, but that's what made us decide to build the tiny house at Oz Farm. And that's why we call it the tree house, because this tree is really beautiful. I think it's an oak tree and it's just really beautiful. There's also cedar trees here, all kinds of different specimens that I'm learning about, still learning about. So we just left the tiny house, the tree house, and now we're walking to Sunset Deck. We also have trails throughout Oz Farm. When we did the Land Rover event, they actually came and built all these amazing trails. There was quite a lot of wet. It had rained and we were going to do this whole mud part of the event, which was really cool. So these are all trails that have been made. So when people come and ride their horses or bring their trucks, you can be on this trail, and then it leads to the beautiful Sunset Deck. Sometimes we have big long tables out here for dinner. We have a fire pit. And I've done wedding ceremonies out here. We do a lot of photographs out here with the brides and grooms, and it's really special. We've had DJs and dance parties out here. And I just started to put this together, which was really fun. Power washed it myself, picked out some furniture, got the swinging chairs, and it's a beautiful, quiet place. Put your feet up and you can see the sunset and the mountains at night, and it's really beautiful. It's one of those other really special spots on the farm because I do so much work here between the businesses and the horses and things like that. It's just one of those places where no laptops, maybe a book, and some birds who live here, yeah. So this is a really special spot. So Sunset Deck, and we have string lights out here, and I do have long, beautiful tables for it. I can show you some setups that it looks really special, but here we are. This was sort of built for me and my friends, like girl time, you know. Everyone's been rehashing a lot of Sex and the City episodes, so it's like, this is like the country version, but it's just, there's nothing to distract you out here. You just see the mountains and the grass and have a cool breeze. And so sometimes we have lunch out here, definitely fire pit. So I really use it for like peaceful, trying to protect your peace, you know. It's really beautiful out here. So I bought Oz Farm in 2006, and by 2012, I was spending like 50% of my time up here from New York City. And what I've learned for me, especially as an equestrian, I would rather live in the country and visit the city for the theater, for restaurants, for seeing my friends. Obviously, I still do business in the city too, but not full. I grew up full time living in New York City, running Tavern on the Green as a young age. I was 22, had 1,000 employees, the Russian tea room, and just work. And 95% of my life has been work, which I'm totally fine with. I obviously love that, but you have to have a balance, and you hit a certain point in your life when balance is important. So I have to have spaces like this to not distract me. I still have cell phone service here, but if I didn't, it would be a gift. But sometimes I do leave it, which is just the nicest moments. And my sister and I hang out here, my loved ones and I hang out here. So it's really, it's a very sacred place to just relax and look at the mountain and enjoy the peace of the country.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Christiana.
And I'm Nick. This is our first home in Granville, New York. And come on in, we'll give you a tour.
Welcome to our newest Homeworthy series called Our First Home, where we meet young lovebirds who are building their first nest together.
Now we're the Taylors.
We're married.
These couples have both charming love stories and lovely homes.
It just feels great to be not only building a home, but building a life together.
So prepare to be swept off your feet by these incredible pairs and the places they call home. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. To shop items inspired by this and other Homeworthy episodes, be sure to check out the product links below for amazing furniture, accessories, and more. I'm Christiana Pena, and I work in real estate marketing.
And my name is Nick Porter, and I work in PR and social media.
So we live in Granville, New York, which is way, way, way upstate. When people down in New York City say they're going upstate and they're going like 20 minutes, an hour out of the city, this is truly upstate. We are about an hour and a half northeast of Albany, which is about 45 minutes from Saratoga Springs, which are just two cities that people might be familiar with. We're right on the border with Vermont. You could throw a stone and the Green Mountains are right over there. Granville is a small little town that is known as the colored slate capital of the world.
Yep.
You think of slate, you usually just think of like gray tones, but there's purples and reds and kind of greenish blues. It's really beautiful, and that is really what got Granville its start, were all these slate quarries. So when you drive around, you still see a lot of that history and heritage. Our property is just this little postage stamp size lot, and there are two buildings on it actually, but the one that drew us to this property is where we're sitting right now, inside this historic church, which was founded in
1780.
Well, the congregation was founded in 1782, and then the building was built in 1793 as the first church of Granville. It's crazy to think that this building has that kind of longevity and history in this community, and it's been really exciting as we've been, telling people that we're here, and people have seen us doing work. People say, oh, we used to go to Sunday school in that church, or my uncle got married in that church. Those stories are exciting. Unfortunately, not too many people seem to have photographs of that so far.
People come by, they never bring pictures.
Yeah. Right next to the church is a small little cottage, which was the reason that we could really make this move and this property work. We could live in the cottage while we've been doing renovations here in the church. We looked at a bunch of other properties, especially a lot of other churches all over New York State and some in New Jersey when we were thinking about this move. And they all had the same problems of, no heat, no water, no services of any kind, but none of them then had like that auxiliary structure where we could live and make it make sense to move while we were doing it. But this one did. So it just really stood out in that big way. We've been together something like 7 years, give or take. And we met at work. We started out just working on projects together and friendship, and then it grew into more, and now here we are.
Our first date's a little indeterminate because we started out as friends, but I think the first date was probably, I like photography and went to a Wolfgang Tillman show in Midtown, and I think it was her idea, so that seemed like a good basis to start things on.
It was nice because it was like seeing Nick in his element, like the thing that inspires him, because we spend so much time at work just doing work things. So getting to see like how this artwork and this photography really lit him up was really exciting.
Welcome to our church's vestibule.
Technical term being
The narthex.
There you go.
It's the lightest part of the church. It's a transition space, and it's always in transition, as you can see. It's a little unfinished, but
we're working on
it's a work in progress.
Yeah. So these huge windows let in so much natural light. So this is where all of my plants live. Everyone is thriving. We've also used it as a chance to feature some of Nick's own photography. So it's kind of a little like transitional gallery.
Sort of testing it out with these giant prints that we printed for a party, and then, we think it looks pretty good, so we'll probably do more of them or do better ones or what have you.
Change them out over time. But they're fun because these photos are taken in California, in Long Beach, where Nick's family lives. So it's also kind of nice every time he comes in to have this fun little reminder of like back home.
Yeah, it's a reminder of the best coast.
Okay, sure.
What else?
Well, and then for me, two of the things that are really special to me in this room are actually above us, the vintage Murano chandelier. That was actually a birthday present to me, I think when I turned like 38 or 37. I had mentioned, I was in a vintage shop in Brooklyn with a friend, and very much in passing said, that's a lovely chandelier. I like it so much. And then fast forward like a year later, she had gotten a dozen or so friends all together to pitch in and buy me this incredible chandelier that I never would have splurged on myself, but all these people came together. So I just felt so loved and felt so appreciated by such a great group of people. So the chandelier is really important. And then also above us, over the main doorway in the transom space, is a piece of stained glass that my father made. My parents are both very crafty. You'll see some work by my mom inside the sanctuary. But this piece here, my father produced for the renovation as part of us being featured on Who's Afraid of a Cheap Old House. And so it's such a great reminder of my family as well.
All right, so that's the vestibule, and let's head on into the sanctuary.
Welcome to our sanctuary. This is basically our home. It's one big 2,000 square foot room that's, divided out into zones, but it's this one big, beautiful space. It's kind of like if you ever dreamed of living in a loft in the city, but that was never financially in the cards, you could just live in a converted church in Granville.
21-foot ceilings?
22.
So if you ever feel really anxious in the other building, you can come over here and kind of like calm down a little bit.
You come into the vestibule, you can go left or right through either of the doors, and immediately you were just drawn right to the center of the sanctuary with this incredible, incredible chandelier. It is a handmade piece that actually was made not too far from us, just over the border from New York in Vermont in West Rupert by a company called Authentic Designs. And originally, when we were doing the initial renovation and restoration as part of the HGTV production with Who's Afraid of a Cheap Old House, they had very generously lent the chandelier. But once it was here, we were just like,
yeah, couldn't leave.
It's the most beautiful thing, and it's handmade. So the opportunity to support this company that is still so committed to craftsmanship and quality is just really important to us. And it just you walk in and you can't deny it, just beckons you to this space.
Yep.
Which is why we decided to we really wanted the heart of this sanctuary space to be this kind of melty lounge area. And the couch is a saga unto itself, for sure, in terms of how we finally landed on this couch. To Nick's dismay, I went through a couch phase.
Yeah, we collected many couches.
Oh, I like that you changed that to we, because that's fair.
Well, I was definitely involved. I remember it, with many U-Hauls.
Yeah.
And some of them are still downstairs, so.
Yeah, that's.
If anyone wants any.
Yeah, we have a couple of couches
dealership
that need a home. But the challenge with such a big space is we needed some big furniture pieces. Everything being kind of normal scale for your traditional residential home just would feel too small in this big room. And the couch, wanting it to anchor the central area like we wanted, it was really important that we had a couch that felt like it had some size and presence to it. And I don't know, we looked for at least a year, if not more, new companies, lots of vintage all over the country, and we're finding lots of options, of course, but everything was just so pricey, and we just didn't have an endless budget to work with. But diligence and patience paid off, right?
Obsessive searching, yeah.
I mean, call it what you want.
She's doing that all the time anyway, so.
So we found a vintage shop in Connecticut called Refill Vintage that had this insane, I want to say it's from the 70s, this insane, really buttery, soft, I don't know if it's performance, suede. I don't think so. I don't really know, but It is beautiful, and each of the pieces are disconnected. They're on casters, so it's endlessly, configurable, I guess. We can, as we change how we want to use the space, or just as we flex with, if we're having people over and we want to set it up differently, whatever the case may be, this will be able to move and change with us. Almost 100% of the rugs in here are from the same source, this incredible auction website called Auction Ninja. When I tell you what I paid for this rug, you're gonna wanna just come to our house and smack us across the face, because this rug, actually the rug, first I'll tell you the rug under the rug, the jute rug that is actually two rugs that have been merged
Biggest
together.
rug I've ever seen in my life.
This insane rug that just totally fills the center of our house. I got it on Auction Ninja at an estate sale for $90. $90. That's insane. That's insane. I mean, it's crazy. So that's the jute rug, and then this beautiful rug with all these red and hints of blue tones on top of it. I think I paid $150 for. These prices are crazy. I sound like a used car salesman, but it's crazy because we have such this huge space that we need to be really thoughtful and economical about how we fill it, but we don't want to sacrifice style and beauty and all of those other things. So you'll hear Auction Ninja a lot if you ask me about where we got our rugs from, but that's where this beautiful red rug came. And the coffee table was actually sourced by the design team for Who's Afraid of a Cheap Old House. Jen Salvamini was the lead designer for that. And I don't know for sure. I think she sourced this secondhand from Apartment Deco, maybe, but I'm not sure. But anyway, this was sourced secondhand, but by the design production team. So I don't know too much about it, but it's nice because even though it's big and has a lot of heft to it, the glass being transparent means that it doesn't feel like the center of the room is this big block. It still feels nice and light and airy, I think.
Yeah, it does. This area is kind of multi-purpose. I feel like we do a little bit of everything in here. Working in here is nice. When you need a relaxed vibe for work.
Yeah.
She likes to do puzzles.
True.
Mostly we watch movies in here. We have a projector that sits behind us and projects on a screen in front of us. So
Yeah.
kind of a home theater experience.
I mean, it's
What
pretty
else?
incredible. I mean, at night when this entire room is dark and you just have this this big screen and this projector in this huge space, it can be very atmospheric.
Yeah, we had a watch party for the show that we were on, and it worked out well. There was 40 people in here, and it was perfectly comfortable. So when I first walked into this church, I think my reaction was a mix of excitement and horror. It was damp, wet. There was a giant hole in the floor. I was excited about having something like this, but it was really hard to imagine us finishing it off. So that was my conflicted first feelings walking in.
I mean, when I first walked in, yes, I was kind of starry-eyed and oh my gosh, it's so amazing. I mean, the height of the space, the windows, everything just was grand and had this incredible scale to it, which I found incredibly inspiring. But Nick's right, the hole in the floor took up a quarter of the space. It was a huge hole in the floor, which we don't know for sure if this is correct, but we were told that one of the previous potential owners or tenants before us was a puppet theater, and so they had taken the floorboards up in that area with the intention of putting whatever mechanics you need to operate a puppet theater, and then I guess it didn't happen, but they left the floor.
And of course, the hole in the floor ended up being the least of our problems, so.
Well, that's the thing.
Black mold was probably a lot.
Yeah, Nick
problem?
kept pointing out I think we have a mold issue, and it's not that I'm impractical, but I was just yeah, that's fine, it's fine, mold. And he just kept saying no, I think we really have a mold issue on our hands. And then when it finally came around to addressing that, it was a pretty significant mold issue. But at the time when we were just walking into the space, I think it was just kind of equal parts awe and a little bit of intimidation because it's a non-traditional space. And so thinking about, yes, you can put a kitchen in here, but how do you do that? And where do you do that? And how do you add a bathroom? And how do you make it feel like a home? I don't think we were fully, jumping that far ahead, but it was definitely in our minds and weighing on us.
I was trying to compartmentalize and just
Yeah.
do one thing at a time. Well, let's show you the kitchen now.
I mean, it's kind of hard to miss it. It's this
behind
incredible,
us.
it's this incredible space anchored by this beautiful, beautiful mural. So it's funny that we have this incredible, very enviable kitchen now, because before we moved here, our apartment in Brooklyn, our kitchen was like maybe the size of this tiny section of counter. And now we have this incredibly designed, really beautiful space to really stretch our legs and I guess become the chefs we never even knew we were meant to be. But the focal point for sure is this insane, beautiful, beautiful mural. It's actually
wallpaper mural.
It's wallpaper. It's by a company called Fine and Dandy. And it actually, I think, came from talking with the designer about Nick's love of photography and the fact that he does photography.
Yeah, it's supposed to mimic like 19th century photographic techniques. I mean, obviously it's the first thing everyone sees when they come in, and it completely ties the room together. So
Yeah.
it's hugely important. I'm not sure what would be there if it wasn't there.
This niche, this would have originally been where like the altar, the pulpit would have been for the church. This was also
And the hole.
where the hole was. So when we first came to visit the church, this was a hole. You could not stand here.
Caution tape and everything.
Yeah, keep out signs. It's crazy to think how far it's come. But when you walk in, I mean, this is the first thing that greets you. And it just is like the most incredible statement. And it's mirrored by this other niche on the opposite side of the room. And I think the fact that the other niche where you'll see my collection of Blue Boy reproductions, that is very much like a gallery wall. But when you see that, the idea that this would have also been another gallery wall, I think you just know that it would have just been too noisy and just like too cluttery. So having the guts, I think, to make such a huge design statement, I don't know if I would have ever had the guts to do that, but I'm so glad that somebody else had the vision and the authority to do that on our behalf, because I couldn't be more happy with what she did.
Me too.
Yeah, but also, so the church is from the late 1700s, but there were renovations and updates in the Victorian era around the 1860s, and so this sepia tone aesthetic is meant to also speak to kind of that Victorian history of Victorians being naturalists and this kind of like exploration of photography. I don't know why, but I kind of have an obsession with multiples, which I think is kind of Nick shares when it comes to his photography in a way, but you'll see as we kind of walk around that it's like, I'll find this one glass pear out in the wild and I'll think it's lovely and I'll get it. And then maybe a couple of weeks or months later, I'll see another and I'll just think to myself, like, this is fate. I'm meant to have this pear. And so suddenly I have 5.
It's the cycle. You see this in antique stores a lot. Life goes on, people get older and they start getting a little kookier.
Yeah.
And then they collect hundreds of certain things.
So you'll see, like, so I've got these multiple pears. I've got my ridiculous collection of Blue Boys. I have collections of these porcelain busts. I have these weird lobster wine decanters. Like, I don't need these things. And I definitely don't need 10 of them or 5 of them or 35 of them. But it's like, once you get into it, you kind of can't stop yourself. And it just sparks this incredible sense of joy and this like discovery every single time. And we have a fun little collection of vintage cups and containers and teapots and things. So like, you know, some of the things that are favorites, like I love these vintage little Pyrex that come in a variety of colors. Like, these are so fun and you see them all over. And I know they can be really expensive, but we're just collecting them for fun. So it's like, if I find one for $1, like, why not? These ones here, I really love. They're not that old, but the reason I love them is because we're not that far from Bennington, Vermont. It's about an hour away. And this is Bennington pottery, which I don't pretend to know a whole lot about like how this style developed, but this is signature of Bennington Pottery Works. So to have a little set like this just feels like very connected to the area where we live. Similarly, this guy, and actually he is a friend, this great little dish that I haven't really yet figured out what I want to use this one for. But these, actually, technically, this is Nick's.
Thank you. This came from Shackleton Thomas, which is a pottery company in
Woodstock?
Woodstock, Vermont?
That's a lie.
No, it's in Vermont.
It's
sort of close by.
Yeah, in Vermont. They are incredible. They hosted us actually. The real estate marketing website that I work for, Circa Old Houses, we had like a little staff kind of retreat a couple years ago to Vermont, and the Shackleton Thomas folks were incredibly welcoming and invited us in for a wood shop tour, but attached to the Shackleton Thomas wood shop, Charlie Shackleton, his wife Miranda, has her own pottery that like, this is really, I mean, it's crazy. I, to be fair, did not necessarily know this going in, but like presidents have been gifted Miranda's pottery.
Made pottery for all manner of world leaders.
Yeah, it's incredible. And so
I've heard.
Yeah, so Nick has this mug from that visit, and then when we had our kind of housewarming party, they were so sweet. They gave us this adorable little, this kind of rabbit motif is very signature of Miranda's work, but they gave us this great little dish to welcome us home. So these are really meaningful to us as well. So this little kind of pearlescent, iridescent teapot is old, and it's from my grandmother. And my grandmother told me that the reason it was so special to her is that when she was a little girl growing up, and when she would come home from school in the winter time, I'm from South Dakota originally, so you can imagine winter, it's very cold. She's a small child coming home. Her mother would make her little pots of hot chocolate to warm up like after school. And so when she told me this, I was like, I really need this in my home. So I don't use it too often because it just feels very special, but I like having it out because every time I see it just kind of on the shelf, makes me think of home. This pot, these little feet, and this little guy here, this little kind of like Wietpost is from our friends at Quitner, which is actually south of us in the Hudson Valley in Germantown. They have antiques and they support local makers. And so same, when we had our housewarming party, they were very kind and gave us this beautiful pot with these lovely little feet. And I just haven't decided yet what is kind of worthy to be in this little pot. But this little dish has migrated around all over this, kind of serving a function, like just quickly throw things in it sometimes, but it's just like this beautiful speckleware that we just love.
Christiana also has an affinity for small and large pieces of marble.
True fact.
You'll see a lot of those around.
Yes, so this was
another
actually,
antique store collection.
This was a housewarming gift to me by my coworker, my colleague, Elizabeth Finkelstein, who is the co-founder, co-owner of Circa Old Houses and its sister account that you might be familiar with, Cheap Old Houses, co-host of the show we were just on. So her and her mother, Gail, shout out to Gail, they knew that I have this weird affinity for just like beautiful pieces of like stone slabs. Like we've got this one here, I have one like in a windowsill, I've got one in the vestibule under a plant, I've got this beautiful like Indian red marble brick here. Like I don't know what I'm doing with them,
but they're column over there.
But they're beautiful, and they just have this incredible texture and color, and you know, like this sense of connectedness because they're this natural material. Like they're just stunning. How could you? What's not to like? So for my 40th birthday, Nick treated me to a couple of days of just antiquing anywhere you want to go. Not only would he take me, but he would go in the store and he would have a smile on his entire time and be very like into it, which is not always the case.
Yeah, so on the way out of town, I went through Rutland, Vermont, and I forget what the store is called, small antique store.
Yeah.
I smilingly and begrudgingly went in, and we found this radio.
But you were rewarded. See, like this is why you go, because you
this
never know.
This is a good find.
Well, and also this goes to show like another example of like just random piece of stone. Like this is beautiful, right? Like I don't know, like it's good. It serves a purpose. So yeah.
So Nick, it's an antique radio. It's got a record player in it. I think it was $50.
Careful.
It works. It works fine.
You can open it more. So actually, yeah. This side just holds the records. This side has the mechanics of it going on, but it works perfectly. Yeah, it was like $100.
That was one of those shocking moments where we were like, "How much is this?" And the guy was like, "50."
Yeah.
Our mouths were kind of agape, and we're like, "We'll take it, I guess."
Yeah, it is a Magnavox. Like we said, works perfectly. The record works. The radio works. The radio is like I'm still trying to figure out necessarily like the balance of everything.
We'll get there.
Yeah, but it's just like a beautiful piece that. Like we needed a console, we needed something behind the couch, and we'd been thinking of like small bookcases or something, and who knows, like we might still, this has moved around several times, and right now it really feels at home here. But yeah, I mean, it just goes to show, like we didn't go searching for this vintage radio console, but like it found us. It drew us to it.
When we started wanting to look at houses, I think we started normally, but then Christiana has an obsession with old structures, especially unorthodox ones. So it quickly became a search for only a church.
You think about buying real estate, especially when it's your first home and we don't know what we're doing and we're learning about this process of appraisals and comparable properties. And there's really no such thing as a comp to a 1793, 200 plus year old church. Like there's just no comps. And so finding the financing to make it happen was really challenging, and a couple of other kind of stumbling blocks along the way. But then it kind of all at the last minute, kind of all tied up and
Yeah, it was
worked.
probably a year from when we first looked at it to when we closed. So that's the kitchen area, and let's move on to the dining area over here behind you.
Which absolutely always looks like this. It always is set like this.
It's always it's like Thanksgiving dinners that's happening, but with donuts.
No, I mean, this was really fun to set the table like this because, I mean, it's really just the two of us for the most part. Even though we love to have people over and we do love to entertain, we're still like doing a lot of things to be prepared to really do that. But you know, we have just like a mix of like new and old, like some beautiful like plates from companies like Green Row, but then like also some vintage stuff, lots of vintage like depression glass. I think I got these on like 2 years ago. Like a bunch of my like old house and like vintage friends, like 8 of us had this kind of like girls weekend in Connecticut antiquing, and I think I got these for like $25 or something. They are massive. Like they're so heavy, they're so beautiful. One of the things that you find throughout our house is that there's like just eras and styles are just like commingling and kind of all kind of in the sauce together, and the table and chairs are a great example of that. Whereas, you know, our sofa is very mid-century, not mid-century, but 1970s and vintage in that direction. These beautiful handmade chairs, these are Windsor chairs, and they were sourced, or they were really the brainchild of Elizabeth from Cheap Old Houses. She saw these and thought that they'd be a great way to add some kind of history and tradition and craft to the space. And they're stunning. They are so beautiful, and they really go well. This table is secondhand from Kayo, which is a really great website if you're looking to have like high quality stuff and you don't want to necessarily have to pay full price. So they really work beautifully together. Yeah, and then I mean all the other things like I was saying, like it's a mix of like new and vintage, and it all just kind of is commingling together. And you're dining in the shadow of these beautiful kids right here. So it's just like with what I was saying, like with the pears, or when people ask me why I collect Blue Boy, like why do I collect these?
The answer is I don't know.
I don't know either though. It's just that it always kind of starts the same, where you're out in your vintage shopping, you're antiquing, and you see them and you're like, oh, okay, whatever. And it just kind of, it registers in your brain and you go on. And then the next shop, you see them again. And then the next shop, you see them again. And then you just start to think about how these things, there are so many of them because at a certain point in time, they were popular in American culture to have them in your home because it said something about your awareness of culture and style and history and like wanting to feel connected to that. But then at a certain point, everyone just like concurrently decided we're past that. So they just all get flung out into the world to vintage and antique shops for people like me to find them. And I just kept finding them over and over. And so I couldn't stop collecting them, and I just thought that the repetition of them, especially in this big space, added some interesting kind of texture without being like too loud and over the top. So now they get to attend all of our dinner parties. Why not?
Noticing a pattern.
Yeah. So Nick's favorite thing
The
in the
aforementioned
house.
piano.
Yes. Do you want to tell them how much we paid for it?
We paid $0?
We paid $10.
We paid $10 for it.
$10.
We picked it up in Boston by ourselves.
Well, first.
Well, we were supposed to be by ourselves.
So first, found this at an auction. Again, this was at Auction Ninja for $10. Nick had said, you know, if I ever found a piano, he'd be interested in one. And I was like, I could make this happen.
I was looking for a stand-up piano or something small. We went to Boston, pick it up, tried bringing it down the stairs with like back straps, and my back broke immediately. And so the owners ended up having to help us. Their neighbors had to help us. So
it was quite a sight.
I'm sure they like us a lot. But
And then-
we ended up getting it down.
Yeah.
and here
Yeah.
somehow.
Well, and then we got home and it sat in our driveway in the U-Haul for like 2 days so that we could just recover. And then our friends, Trisha and Bobby, who have an incredible handyman service here in town, they helped us move it in, put it in place. And it was funny because after all that, like I always joke to people that like this piano was kind of like our IKEA. Like, you know how like couples, like you'll go to IKEA and like you'll start arguing about whatever. That was this for us. Like, I feel like this like took our relationship like to the brink, you know, because it was just like so incredibly difficult.
Well, it takes a village.
Yeah.
Forced against their will to move a piano.
Well, and then after all of that, we moved it into place, and then we contacted a tuner to come and tune it. And the first thing he says, he comes in, he's got all his stuff laid out, and he's testing it. And he's like, before I even get started, I have to tell you, like, this is probably not even worth tuning. Like, it's not really great. And we were like, please don't tell us that. We can't bear to move this thing out. It was too traumatic. It has to work. It has to stay. And the longer he kind of played around with it, he was like,
It's
well,
fine. He was being dramatic.
Well, he was just like, you know, as long as you're not trying to have like concerts or like high quality thing. Like we're like, no, this is just something for us to kind of like we've both played piano at different points in our lives. This is just kind of a fun thing for us to kind of get back into. And then actually just the other day, Nick a while ago had said that he would love to find a metronome to go with the piano. And you can get them online, like you can get them on Etsy, you can get them on eBay, all over the place. And ones in good condition can be pretty pricey. And I just happened to be at our town little antique shop the other day, just looking, because one never knows. And I found this little guy for $25. And he works beautifully. So whenever Nick's ready to start his lessons, and wait, what did you learn? Is like when you move this center part down, that quickens it, I believe. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful object.
Yeah. So complementing or kind of setting the backdrop for the piano, we have 2 lobster-shaped wine decanters to celebrate the sesquicentennial of the state of Maine, because why wouldn't you have 2? But then on the wall here, as much as we love vintage, I mean, I think our taste is incredibly eclectic, and a lot of this is primarily my art, and a lot of it is obviously not the same kind of like era of like the rugs and the piano and the Windsor chairs. It's much more contemporary. These 2 pieces are vintage that I got when I was still living in Brooklyn. This one is from Dobbin Street Vintage. It's this like great kind of French cyclist. This op art is from a place called Pippin Vintage, also in the city. And then these 3 little kind of animals that say objet d'art are by this really great artist that Nick and I met when we were doing...
You wrote an article on him.
Yeah, we wrote an article for Untapped, which is a website about like arts and culture.
He lives in
Providence now.
He lives in Providence now, yeah.
Oh, he was in New Rochelle at the time. But he does this he just does this really beautiful expressive art. We love his stuff so much. And so I've always told him that as he creates more of these particular series, that I have the right of first refusal because I love them so much.
He's extremely prolific. He puts stuff out like every day, and a lot of it is just really good.
Yeah. But then even like I love Miro, and actually the reason that these 2 lithographs are important and valuable to me kind of emotionally and sentimentally is because when I was a junior to senior year in college, I studied abroad for a year in Paris, and I interned at the Paris Gallery of Galerie Mecque, which represented Miro. So these 2 pieces, like I love Miro, you'll see his books all throughout our house. And so these 2 pieces are especially meaningful to me because they were the 2 pieces that I was gifted at the end of my internship, or stage, as they say.
Fancy.
En français. And then this is by an artist, Blonda. You can follow her online. I love her work too, but you can see it kind of all fits into a similar kind of style. This is incredibly important to me because this is my cat, Tom, who moved with us from the city to Granville and then unfortunately passed away not long after. But this picture is drawn by my godson, Ambrose, who lives in Saratoga, very close to us. So that is very meaningful to me. And then this long piece here is Niagara Falls, because we go to Buffalo and kind of the Niagara area kind of regularly because there are some bands out that way that Nick has been following for a long time. So whenever we go out there, we usually try to check out the falls. So everything kind of has a little story and piece of meaning behind it. Our style, to be fair, I mean, I will admit that a lot of what is happening right now, a lot of it stems from the things that we brought with us from the city, a lot of which was mine. But a lot of our style, our shared style though, is very vintage, secondhand. Nick has a lot of art prints and different photography pieces that he's collected over time. And we have, I think, a lot of things that we've collected together that represent like places we've traveled, where we're from. So I think that like, it's nice to be able to look at the things in our home and everything kind of has a memory attached to it. Like, oh, remember we bought that when you were visiting my family in South Dakota for the first time, and you know, or we bought that when we were visiting your sister in Ecuador. Like, I mean, everything kind of has a story attached to it. Nothing is kind of haphazardly purchased, I think.
Christiana's very passionate about antiquing and buying things secondhand. So I'd say the way this place turns out, a lot has to do with where we go and how we acquire things.
The thing that distinguishes building this home together versus when we were living together, for example, down in New York City and in Brooklyn, is that when we lived together in the city, one of us had already one of us was moving in with the other. So one of us was kind of entering somebody else's world and entering someone else's life. And yes, that the things we're adjusting to accommodate and for it to be both of ours. But this is something that we started with a completely blank slate. So it was really a chance to say like, yes, you have all these things and I have all these things, but this is how they're gonna really come together now from zero to create like what truly our home together looks like, versus my home with a little like sprinkles of Nick, or Nick's home and sprinkles of me. It's truly, I think, us coming together.
Yeah, we lived in the city for 12, 13 years, and I don't know, for some reason, everything always felt temporary there to me, because you never know what's gonna happen when your rent goes up, or when you sign your next lease or whatever. So yeah, this place, it's a mix of both of us, and it's nice to see it slowly evolve as we bring more things into it. So it'll be somewhere totally different a year from now and 2 years from now than it is right now. So,
well, even just in the last year or so, you know, like I said, we worked with this TV show and this design team to outfit this space, and that was so essential. It really helped us see how you can make this space work. But we've already moved stuff around like 2 or 3 times since then, because it is such a huge space and it is so different, and we're learning how to live in it, you know, all the time. So I think that it's so big and flexible in that way that we're going to keep kind of seeing how we need it to work for us, and it's going to be able to keep evolving.
So that's the piano area. Let's go over and check out the ultimate collection of Blue Boys and slash bar area.
So when we have friends over, we can make drinks. We have a great little kind of incense station kind of going on here, because it was, obviously, we are in a former church, so you'll see throughout our home there are kind of these ecclesiastical touches that just kind of harken to what this building used to be. So from here, though, you can see, I'm especially proud, I believe I'm up to like 36 Blue Boys. These are reproduction works. Blue Boy was originally painted by Thomas Gainsborough, and the original is in the collection of the Huntington Library in California. I have yet to see it in person.
I've seen it in person.
But again, it's just one of those things where there was a time, I mean, this painting captivated the world. It was really regarded as one of the most successful paintings ever produced. Like these beautiful colors, the positioning, everything about it was celebrated. And people wanted to recognize that they knew that, so they wanted these in their home. And it's just crazy to me that like there are plates and there are porcelain pieces and there are statuettes. One of those is a music box. Like
stitching.
Yeah,
knitting.
I mean, it like just the incredible variety is just nuts. Like, can you imagine someone in like the 1960s just like chilling in their living room working on this like needlework while they like decided to welcome Blue Boy into their home? Like, it's crazy to me. As if just having Blue Boy looking down on you was not already a special experience.
Try sleeping with 20 of them staring at you.
This is like, we call this kind of the sleeping loft. It's only like 2 or 3 steps up from the main level of the sanctuary, but it's this raised area. This used to originally, this would have been like the choir loft. This would have been where the choir or an organ would have been with the congregation behind, you know, on that side. So this is all behind you. So this is what we've created as like our sleeping area. So as you're sitting here trying to like fall you know, into slumber, you have this beautiful collection of 35, 36 Blue Boys to, you know, gaze down, talk to you about how your day went, listen to all your troubles. It's pretty special.
The real one's more creepy though, because it kind of follows you the eyes follow you around the room a little bit.
Exactly.
These not so much.
Yeah. But this actually, in this area too, you still have the vestiges of what Nick was saying before about my kind of period of time when I was collecting couches. So this couch, which has a matching chair, I love. It's this like fun kind of 60s vintage pattern, but we don't really have a place for it anymore. But it's just too good to get rid of. So we're just kind of hanging on to it in this area for a little bit longer while we kind of figure out maybe if it makes sense elsewhere. The bed, everything on our bed is by this great new company that I just learned about called Green Row. That it's one of those things where it's like when we do have to buy new, because not everything is vintage, a lot of it is, but not every single thing. It's great when we can find companies that kind of have that same approach to like craftsmanship and longevity, and Green Row definitely does. So that's what we have for like our bedding and our nightstand and our great little lamp, but then complemented by like fun little touches like this kind of tile coaster from Fireclay, which is a really great company out of California, and then just some more like vintage, like depression glass, just like little bits of like new mixed with old, just tell such a layered, beautiful story. So that's the sleeping loft. We looked at the kind of bar area, which is just kind of like a nice little kind of loungy moment with this beautiful kind of East Lake style chaise lounge here. Just kind of is like a beautiful little moment.
I do want to point out my collection because these things are contagious, so it's kind of an arms race. So I decided to start collecting ashtrays. We got this one in Montreal. Yeah, Montreal. I don't know much about it, just looks nice.
I will show you one of the things that is great about an old house, of course, is learning the history, not only of the house, but the community also. And we were kind of surprised that even though our now house was originally the first church of Granville, that was its name. It was, like we said, the congregation established in 1782, the building in 1793. We went to our local historical society, we asked our town historian, and found little to nothing, surprisingly, for what seems like a really significant building in the community. But then, actually, an old preservation professor of mine had suggested, like, well, you should just check your local library. They might have a local history section. So we did, and our local library, the Pember, had this great compendium, I guess.
This book's amazing. It's 100 years of the church?
Yeah.
100-year history. It's basically a chronicle of failures and infighting.
It's
and
so good.
Committees put together to investigate people dancing, stuff like that. So
the town newspaper, the Granville Sentinel, when the congregation finally dissolved, like the congregation finally like came to an end, they did like a year-long retrospective in the town paper based on the church records. And it's just so hilarious to read back because it's like, we obviously when we're looking at it, we're interested about kind of like the color that it brings to the people behind the church. But initially I was looking at it in the hopes it would talk a bit about the building, like, you know, when they started building, design choices in the 1860s when they started to renovate. But there's really nothing about that.
It's mostly about how they never have any money and they're
it's much more about
constantly
the people
making promises they can't keep.
Yeah, and the infighting. But it's the kind of thing that, like, as ridiculous as it might seem now, kind of with the benefit of time, it is still an incredibly valuable document to us because it tells us like the people who really then you can walk like a block down from our church and the cemetery that used to be affiliated with this church. Half the names that you see in this document, like they're there in that cemetery. Like the connection to the earliest days of this town are really visceral and palpable. It's really powerful.
Over here, this is sort of my work area and my art wall, which is kind of a mixture of things. We've got some Soviet art, a pop art, some camera posters, but mostly everything else here is done by a guy from one of my favorite bands, probably forever. They're called Every Time I Die. They're broken up now, but shout out to Jordan Buckley, hardcore scene band, very DIY, and so he does a lot of art. And these are tour posters over here. Yeah, so I've been seeing them since I was a teenager, basically, and this is kind of a reminder of that. Echoing the religious nature of everything, I wanted to get a sensor for a while so we could do, various rituals and things.
Sure.
But yeah, we found this when we were in Ecuador, like was mentioned, we were at we had a guide taking us around and we were at a market.
Like an open air market, yeah.
In Quito, where people just like forge things and make things themselves. We found this a guy had a booth with all brass stuff in it. And that was just there right in front of us, so
yeah,
it's kind of meant to be. I don't know.
Yeah, we found that like day one, like an hour into the tour.
Yeah, it was like the first thing.
Yeah, and
Felt
then
a little
just
too good to be true.
hope we could get it home.
So this desk came from Cheap Old Houses with the show.
This is the heaviest piece of furniture.
It was originally up here where the bed area is now. That was a work area. We moved it down here. We had to wait a while because it's unbelievably heavy. We had to have we paid, I think, 2 guys to come in here and help me move it.
Yeah.
And it took all three or four of us to move it, but
it's like the
it's
definition
like a two-sided
of they
two-sided
don't
work
make it
desk.
like they used to anymore. It's like so
Yeah.
well made. It's like the thickest wood.
Yeah, it'll be here long after I'm dead. Yeah, but we've got that. It's kind of sparse right now because it's huge. I don't have a lot of stuff to put on it. This is the first entry in the ashtray collection. Tommy's Taxi Service. I don't know if that was a real place or ironic or what.
But well, at the time, I got it for you because at the time we had our cat Tom, and I don't know, it just felt like silly and like connected. So I was like, oh, why not?
Yeah, so standing ashtray. Very cool.
We mentioned my dad, in the vestibule, we mentioned that my dad does stained glass and created that transom piece. My mother is a quilter, and so this is not a dog bed because we don't own a dog yet. This is just a big floor pillow that adds like places that people can sit and relax and lounge. And so my mother created this original quilt cover for it for me. So again, it's like everything like connects us kind of back to like some memory or someone that's important to us. But I love this. Like I can't imagine like my mom, Deb Pena, like her little fingers like doing all these like tiny little squares, but she just does them like so carefully and expertly. It's just like, it's such a beautiful thing. I'll have it for forever. And this is actually, the quilt on the couch is also by my mom. If there's a quilt, Deb Pena made it, because at this point, like, I see vintage quilts sometimes and they're so beautiful, but I feel like I'd be like cheating on her craft if I were to get it from anyone else. So if there's a quilt, it's by her.
My advice to others when buying their first home would have to be simple. Just have patience, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm a lot more patient person after we were here than I was before. So it took a lot of faith that things would turn out, and it looked like a lot of times like they weren't going to turn out. So simple virtue from me.
And for me, advice that I would give someone looking to buy their first home, I think that Nick's right. Patience is so key, because yes, we could have bought so many other just like perfectly lovely homes along the way. But, and obviously just because we buy this home doesn't mean it'll be the only home we ever own. I mean, probably, I can't imagine ever leaving after all the blood, sweat, and tears. But just feeling like, you know, giving it time and really connecting with the home. And also like not being, like taking a bit of a gamble on yourself. I mean, we lived in an apartment. We were not big DIY people, and by no means have we done this renovation ourselves, by no means. But still being able to see that this needed so much work, and having a little faith in ourselves that we could be patient and we could do it and we could be a part of the process of making it happen was really important, because now this incredible building has a new chance at life, and we have this incredibly unique space. And it, like Nick said, it almost fell through 100 times, and it could have not happened, but I think the fact that we committed to it has really paid off. So I would say to somebody else looking to buy their first home, just really like have confidence in what you can do, and maybe like don't sell yourself short on like a dream project. It could happen.
Moving next door from the work area, this is the library area. Some of the stuff here was from the show as well. This, my favorite, this Chesterfield's my favorite because I've always wanted one. And the show gave us one. It came from, what's the store called?
It's called The Old 1840. It's a vintage shop also here in Granville. The owner, Goliath, is the nicest guy. And we've been talking to him about coming and doing some more patching, but just like, no, I don't think we ever even uttered the word Chesterfield to anyone. So the fact that this happened was like pure, like just fate.
Yeah. And we've got a bookshelf over here, which is massive, but still looks kind of small when you put it in here.
You want to point out some of the books, like your New York collection or the Moby Dick you just got?
Yeah, the interesting stuff's down here. I'm trying to buy old books. Let's start an old book collection, which, yeah, we got Moby Dick. We got this volumes of history of New York. We got a Adirondack history, because we live 10 minutes from Adirondack Park.
The Blue Line?
Yes, the Blue Line. Well, those books all came from, what's the bookstore called? It's in Hebron, New York.
Wilson Homestead, Bookshop and Antiques.
Collection of art and photo books. A very cool globe, which also came from the show.
Well, talk through some of the books. Like, what are some of the ones that you like?
What are some of the ones
I
I
tried to
like?
put out the ones that I know you like. Tillman's I put on the table. No, not Tillman's, right? I don't know. Anyway, I put the ones I thought you would like, but do whatever you want. Pick them up and handle them. Well, it's funny because it's like I did not know Wolfgang Tillman's until I met Nick, but now I love his work as well. And it's funny.
German.
Yeah. And it's funny because, well, maybe it's not funny, but the way that we chose to display Nick's photos in the vestibule with just these like T-pins and binder clips, super simple to allow you to have these like really big pieces is how Tillman's displays his stuff. I mean, that's how we thought to do it.
Yeah. And he also likes lots of different things. What do you call it? Typologies.
What do you mean?
Well, we're talking about how you got Blue Boys. Lots of the same thing repeated over and over again, which is something I think repeated around this room.
Yeah.
Actually, this is the Beschers. They do the same thing, so kind of all. Let me find one. They do typologies too, so repetition of the same kind of structures over and over again. It's kind of a motif that
Apparently we both do.
is going around, I guess.
Yeah. Another vintage.
Oh yeah, ashtray number 3.
Is that one also from Montreal? Did we get those together?
I think so.
Yeah, that one might also be from Montreal.
Another Montreal ashtray.
Yeah.
I think that's all of them.
Next to the library is this pool table that it's funny that we have the piano now because, again, it's a huge space, so there's a challenge in finding ways to fill it. And so kind of having this games area was one solution that the designer for Who's Afraid of a Cheap Old House came up with. And as she told us, she was talking to the production team and said she wanted something big and it would either be a pool table or a piano. And production was like, a piano sounds like an absolute nightmare. Let's just do a pool table. So that's why we ended up with a pool table. And then obviously the piano happened anyway.
Yeah. People come over, they play, it's fun.
But then really kind of the last little corner of the house is just like kind of bringing you back full circle to the kitchen. It's just this little kind of breakfast table, kind of breakfast nook where we also kind of have like the concentration of the various pieces of kind of ecclesiastical art that we've collected over time. Again, almost all of them connecting back to a memory or a moment of something that we did together. For example, like this here is the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Montreal that I got when Nick and I and his mother went on a trip to Montreal together. So it's like, I look at that and I remember that in addition to kind of filling this thematic kind of purpose for us. Or like this cross, this kind of, with this hyper reflective kind of metallic gold. I got this in Mexico when I was on a trip with one of my best friends from down in the city. So it's like whenever I see this, I remember that really incredible trip and traveling with her. So everything kind of like has layers to it.
And this painting on the wall over here.
Go for it.
Where'd we get it?
Buffalo.
Yeah, we got this in Buffalo. It's like a Garden of Eden, good and evil type thing. It's very strange, and it's stranger the closer you get to it.
We were in Buffalo because Nick wanted to go to a hardcore show, and I wanted to go to Buffalo, but I didn't want to go to the show. So I was like, well, you go to your show, and I'll just antique while you do that. So I was at this random antique shop in Buffalo, whose name escapes me, and I saw this insane piece of art that's like, it's kind of like Hieronymus Bosch ridiculousness-ish, but like it's not quite that fantastical, but it is crazy. Like the faces on these animals are just nuts. And so I sent him a big picture and then some close-ups, and he was just like, yes, absolutely. Like, why are you even questioning it?
Yeah, and mainly it's very large, so
yeah, and
we're in desperate need of large things.
It takes up a lot of beautiful real estate on the wall, so it's
laughing are those hyenas?
I guess, I don't even know. But it's just like this lion's face kind of looks like a person, and like, I think this is a dog. Like, that's not a dog's face. What's even going on here? Like, it's just such a bizarre piece that it's kind of hilarious to have.
Yeah, strange and cool.
When we walked in, the entire ceiling was covered with like popcorn.
The whole walls, the ceiling, everything had like crazy thick, goopy, like popcorn wall stuff on it. And then I think
but you could see like there were a couple of places where, because the building hadn't been climate controlled for like decades, so there was cracking and peeling and things were starting to fall apart.
Yeah, lots of little pieces were falling off. And then I think one day people were over here for the show and we saw like lines and letters and stuff. And
like you could
we realized
see
that there was something underneath it.
Just like the glimpses, like kind of the suggestion that there's something, and it was like two linear to just be a random like, you know, color fluctuation or something. It was clearly like an intentional line or something.
Yeah.
And so we had the hope that there would be something lovely underneath all that terrible, terrible popcorn. But it was really a risk because the church had been home to various congregations with various beliefs over time, and how those things are manifested in their art, like, we don't know. So you could have uncovered it and had something very specific to one denomination or another. And the fact that you have this just beautiful, beautiful geometric pattern with still, as faded as it is, this kind of like ruinous like quality to it, it still has a lot of detail intact, is incredible.
And that was probably the single most time-consuming part of
Oh yeah.
the renovations that happened, because it was just a couple of guys up there scraping for God knows how long.
Yeah, just like very, because we didn't have the ability to do like an actual like conservation treatment and approach to like testing like paints and stuff like that. You know, our directive was just do no harm, like as long just like water and manual, just scraping like softly and carefully, and whatever comes. And that's why you can see there's still a lot of places where there's patchy and things like that. But I think even, I can't imagine, I mean, we'll probably just leave it like this. I mean, one could probably spend tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars to have an artisan come in and repaint it, but like this,
we like it. It's got this ruinous, weathered look, and it kind of contrasts well with the clean wall. So it's kind of framed a little bit. So I think it works.
Yeah, for sure. And then you see like just the two little areas where you see these very obvious like white patches. Those are just where we had the most water damage that just had to be fully removed from water damage and mold remediation. So that's what those two kind of splotchy parts are. But it's possible that the paint continues even further down, but it was just like, we can preserve that for later. Like we could always down the road, if we wanted to, continue to explore and kind of peel back layers. But for now, it's just kind of like encapsulating what's there and like celebrating what we can.
And again, just amazing that there's no documentation of what it actually looked like in here.
Yeah. Especially this, because very likely in the 1790s when this building was built, this congregation was very like Spartan, very like, you know, simple country church. Like I have to say, it's probably unlikely that this is from that era. It's probably from this like mid 1800s when you see the windows. Like these windows are not necessarily original. They likely came in the 1860s. Some of you can still see ghosting actually on the rear of the facade. You can see ghosting of the original, well, what is likely would have been original, just squared off windows. On the front facade, we have some like details around the windows that add a little bit of flourish. So it's likely that this was added later. So it's crazy that no one seems to have mentioned, you know, oh, such and such was here for the last month doing the ceiling. It's just crazy that like no one documented that, but
that we know of.
Yeah, maybe, who knows? It could. We still have time. We could find some document. It could happen. But yeah, our ceiling is really, you know, sit on the couch, gaze up. You always kind of find a new little detail. It's really beautiful. I think to me, home is, I don't think it's an easy answer. I think that it evolves over time. I think that it, to me right now, means expression, self-expression, because it's really giving us a chance to play around and explore and kind of define like our vision of home for ourselves. So for me right now, home is like the place that I feel like I can be the most myself and I can really express myself fully.
Definition of home to me is consistency and stability. And a place to make your last stand, basically.
Oh my God, that sounds so silly.
Yeah, I'm defining it against living in the city, but home is just a place where you can kind of stretch out and indulge parts of yourself that maybe you couldn't before, because you feel like you have a place that's yours.
Today on Homeworthy, we're taking you to Hudson, New York for a look inside interior designer Eric Gensler's breathtaking home. Eric's home is the epitome of indoor-outdoor living, with gorgeous floor-to-ceiling windows that emphasize the incredible mountain view. And inside is cool and sleek with mid-century modern decor and artwork. Eric brings us out to his gardens and greenhouse before making a floral arrangement with freshly picked flowers from the cutting garden. Enjoy! You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. Before today's episode, click the join button below to support all of the storytelling we do on this channel. Our growing community of members help to directly fund more videos so we can capture these extraordinary homes from around the world. So join today to receive early and exclusive access to new Homeworthy videos.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Eric Gensler. Welcome to my home in the Hudson Valley. Come on in. Hello, I'm Eric Gensler. I'm an interior designer based in New York City, and today we're in my home outside of Hudson, New York. My husband and I built this house about 7 years ago. It was a field that was part of a big farm. We came here and a lot of the land was cleared. We knew exactly where we were able to put the house. It allows this amazing view and really uninterrupted, and it allows it to feel like you're really just living in nature and seeing the mountains. And it's an amazing place because it's super, super quiet. When we first came up here, my husband and I, in our late 20s, we stayed with friends who actually grew up in this area and had a house, a weekend house, and spent a lot of time up here with them. And we knew we wanted to have a place up here, and we started looking for houses, and all the houses we're seeing were on loud roads. And we came up here for many, many weekends and looked at houses, and none of them felt quite right. And then my husband was like, he's obsessed with looking at real estate listings, and he's really, really good at it. In fact, all of our friends, when they're looking for places, will send him listings, and he'll, within like 30 seconds, he'll be like, there's no natural light, the linoleum floor is going to be torn out, the roof looks old. Like, he's just brilliant at it. And so you can imagine how fun looking at a house was, because he would see all the things. And then he saw this amazing piece of land, and we knew nothing about building houses. I mean, we are like serial movers, and I've always loved moving and renovating houses, and we've moved many, many times and done many projects. And here we just saw this land, and we were with a broker who was like, you absolutely have to just take this land because the view is so special. And we were in our 30s at that point and very impatient. So we looked into prefab houses, which was very much a West Coast thing 10 years ago, but we did find a company called Lindell that makes prefab houses, and they'd just done a partnership with a number of architects as part of the Lindell Architect Collaborative, and they were really, really cool houses. And they gave the Lindell Toolkit, which is essentially all the wood, all the doors, and all the windows, to a set of architects and said, use Lindell to design a house that you've built before, or a concept house. And we saw this house, which is the architect, actually, she and her twin sister are both architects, and they built a similar version of this house, non-Lindell, in California. And I mean, let's first talk about building a California style house in the Hudson Valley in the freezing winter. So city at move number one. There are many, let's call them, we call ourselves Cityots because we make so many dumb mistakes, and that's how we learn. We've gotten better. But yeah, so this is a California style house. It's very mid-century modern, I would say, which is really about one room living. And then on either side of the house, there are the primary suite side. And then over there is which you'll see later, is the guest rooms, which is actually really nice to have that separation and the privacy. And then the really big open concept living, and these are big lift and slide doors. The whole house, like the external pieces of the house, the windows, the doors, all of the wood arrived on like 2 trucks, and they unloaded it. And so my point is that we were able to build this house in under a year because we used Lindell. And we used an architect. We ended up hiring the architect, Leslie Dowling, who is wonderful. And if you look at her portfolio of houses, they're very similar to this, and she does it really well. We really focused with Leslie on customizing the kitchens and baths, which you'll see later, and the interior of the space. So at that point, I was not in interior design. I owned a digital marketing agency called Capacity Interactive that worked with arts and cultural organizations. And so I was building this house while running my company, which was a whole other job. It was very fun. But now, as an interior designer, which I'm about 2 years into my interior design career, and my whole life has sort of been an amateur interior designer, but there's a lot of choices of this house that, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have made. Although it's great because it's ours, and it's a very, very special place. So the first space I want to show you is our living room, and this has evolved a lot over time. The nice thing about working with our architect is she helped us create a furniture plan, so we knew the shape of the living room. But over time, as I learned more about interior design, a lot of the pieces have evolved, and I really love mixing periods, mixing textures, mixing shapes, mixing time periods. And so because the house is mid-century pieces look really great, like these lamps from the 1950s, like 1950s lighting, and you can see the like there's another 1950s lamp over here, like got this on Etsy. There's a lot of great Etsy antique dealers. Actually, this piece right here is Edward Wormley, who was a mid-century American designer. For Dunhill, this is a magazine rack, and you'd see this in office spaces. I love it as a side table because it's really great to store magazines, and it's just such a, I feel like it fits the space of the house, but it's surprising. It's not the side table you'd find at Crate and Barrel. And when I was first doing interior design in the space, I didn't have the resources or really think or know how to layer antiques. And so a lot of the sofa is RH. And if you ask interior designers, they're very antsy about RH because it's all beige, it's all, it's created this concept you can go in a store and create a whole house, which is, I think, a nightmare for most interior designers because it just all looks the same. And I think what's interesting is mixing periods and making it your own and making it a little different. So like these chairs were made, they're sort of based upon the style of a Brentwood chair, which is a really famous French cafe chair, and it's actually bent wood in 2 different species of wood by an artist in Spain. And I picked the leather. It took a really long time to get these made and built, but I think they're so cool because they, the way you see through them, they're a different shape than everything else in the space. And so much about interior design I've learned is around comfort. And so when you're having people over, a sectional is not really conducive to comfort. And so, you have cheese in the center and like everyone's sitting back here. So then you have to like scoot your way up, get your food. And then having a lot of chairs that can easily move and that are smaller and shaped to the human body rather than shaped to the space of the room, I think makes a more functional space. So over time, as I've learned about design, this has really evolved. And another great item there's so many things in here. This is this really cool Italian mid-century side table that I think is really beautiful, but like really mixing like this. And a lot of the materials are local, which I'll show you in a bit. So like mixing mid-century and local items has something that I think makes a lot of sense. And I also think good homes and spaces start with the space where you are. And so the more you can incorporate the fact that we are in the Hudson Valley, the fact that this is very much indoor-outdoor living, it makes sense and it makes the interior better. So as I got into interiors, I really got into upholstery and fabrics and making something unique using lots of trim and tape. And so you take this, actually I did this with a glue gun. Please don't zoom in too closely. I'm just kidding. But oftentimes if I'm doing another project, I would use a professional, but just to learn, and this has very much been my laboratory for design, but I think these turned out pretty decent. This is me and a glue gun with some wide tapes here and just adding color. Because when I started, it was really about like, everything was gray and navy blue, because I love gray and navy blue. But I think like having more of a mix is more interesting. And then really using the color of these paintings as the guide for this room. You see how the pillows really coordinate with they're not paintings, they're prints. It's the founder of the op art movement in the 80s, Julian, and I'm gonna really mess up his last name, Strasnick, perhaps. But these are prints of his, and we got them the week he died, which was really meaningful to the person who sold them to us. But I think the scale of them is really nice. The color of them is really nice. And I think every room, it's great to have one thing that guides the decor, and really looking to the colors in these prints, you can see adds and leads the decor. So over here, we have a very mid-century modern fireplace. This is local. It's a bluestone that is local. I wanted the stone to be not from too far away, and you'll see the bluestone throughout the property. And then this is one of my favorite pieces. It's a sealed chair. This is really beautiful, and I love it in cognate leather. You also sometimes see it in black. Just really comfy to sit by the fire and have coffee and see the view. And then again, paired here with one of these mid-century lamps from the 50s, popping the orange. And then this beautiful piece of art is an artist out of the UK, Luke Edward Hall, who I have another work of his here. And then our apartment in New York City, we have one of his pieces. I think he just beautiful just a beautiful drawing, and I love the color here. This light won't stop shaking. Okay, and all my interior design magazines everywhere. I had to really organize them for this tour. So let's go over here and look from this angle, and you can see this beautiful credenza that's locally made by a furniture maker called Fern. They were based they're still in the Hudson Valley. They used to have a storefront on Warren Street, but now they closed that storefront, but they still make this beautiful furniture, and I have a coffee table as well, but I love this. And this is a Stone and Sawyer lamp, which is also made in the Hudson Valley. And I love trimming lampshades. So this was just a plain linen lampshade, and just found this $2 ribbon that I glue gunned on it. So just finding the colors, it just adds adds another layer of something interesting. So I like when you're looking every part of a room, you discover something, or you can discover something. And then getting the height of the lamp. I'm cheating with books, but I do that a lot. So we'll go from the living room to the dining room, which is the same space, but really thinking about this main area, because it is large and open, creating zones that make sense. And I think there's 3 main zones and 2 sort of mini zones here. So like the fireplace is maybe 1 zone, thinking of a focal place. And here is the dining room, which is a really big table. The scale of it I really like. These chairs, I worked on tape on one just to make it a little more interesting. I'm thinking of doing the other 2 as well. I love setting tables, and I love making flowers for a table, but I think it's important for a dining room that you can see over and see the person across the table. So these are actually chamomile, and they smell like chamomile, and you can dry them and make tea. These lights are also local from the Hudson Valley. It's a company called Niche Modern, and they blow glass in Beacon, and the colors are really, really beautiful. The shapes are really beautiful. It was very hard to choose. They can either come, on a canopy like this, or they can go right into the wall. There's another grouping of them in the kitchen that sort of relate but aren't the same. But it feels very sort of almost 50s with the globe and the hand-blown glass. I think handmade materials are so different, and that's again another thing in learning about interior design is I really try to focus on getting handmade materials and supporting craftspeople if you can, because it just not only you're supporting people who are working with their hands, but you feel the difference. And like when we look here, like this glass is hand blown and you see the flaws in it, but that's why I think it's beautiful. These are from Heath Ceramics in San Francisco. We used to live in San Francisco, and I love everything from Heath Ceramics. They make beautiful tile, they make beautiful plates and homeware, and you see the hand in that, and I think it's quite beautiful. I love using candles. The more candles, if we were going to have dinner here, there would probably be a small candle around each plate and at least 4 candlesticks. And the taller the candlesticks, the better. Like what do they say, Dolly? The higher the hair, the closer to God. You want the candles to reach as high as possible without causing a fire. So I love burning candles. I think it just makes for a beautiful dinner party. And in this room there are a ton of light sources. I don't love overhead light. I think you can use it functionally, but I think if you think about lighting, it's sort of like you want it to mimic the outside. So at night, you don't want really bright overhead lights. You want it to feel like you're lighting candles. So I do put lots of candles around, which I took out because it can look cluttered. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just 5 lamps over here, plus candles, plus many candles, and maybe really dim overhead lighting, because I think in the fireplace during the season, I think like low flickering candles really make for an intimate, lovely atmosphere. And then I was just going to say the final area in here is just a place to sit and admire the view and have a cup of coffee. So that's another sort of mini zone, read a book. We'll just get a glimpse of the outside, but later in the tour. Another thing we didn't know when we were building this house is the sun sets over the mountains there, which is absolutely beautiful, but it is a furnace on this side of the house. And so all of the initial seating was on the furnace side of the house. And so that's why I built the greenhouse garden, which is shadier. And at some point we'll probably do some sort of seating arrangement on that side of the house so we can be outside and enjoy the outside without it being really hot. The other thing I didn't know is with the bugs, it would have been great to have some sort of screened in area. So advice for anyone building a house, talk to people older than you and see what, how they think about entertaining or what they would want, or talk to people in the area. My friend did say 2 things he reminded me the other day that I did not listen to. He said, you want a screened in porch and you want a garage. We do not have a screened in porch, which I wish we did. And we have a carport, which again, California house in upstate New York. I was like, oh, a carport, it'll be fine. Well, when there's snow coming up the side and you're freezing cold out there, it would have been really nice to have a garage. So I don't want to keep you any longer. Let's go outside and see the outdoor space and the gardens. So this is actually a garden path that is hiding a French drain. This was a muddy mess because of this giant hill. So we made the building path here, and tons of water just comes down this hill here. And we just added this, there's drainage under here, but it's actually a great path as well. And then we figured out the right trees for here. So weeping willows like water and they drink all the water. This was a crabapple tree that we were we want a crabapple tree, city it move. And we had 3 crabapples, 2 of them died because they were drowning. But amazing, when we added the weeping willows and this maple that likes to drink water, the crabapple started to thrive. So thinking about just the ecosystem was really helpful, and now the trees are actually doing quite well. And they got that amazing urn over there. That's a 19th century French urn. So the house being very mid-century modern, and as I've grown in my career as an interior designer and learning about different periods, really the garden is where I've incorporated a lot of much older items, so that are much older than mid-century and more international, less American, and we'll see that as we walk through. So here, like these columns are British from the, I think, 1820s. I think they're so beautiful. And I have to say, in the garden, this garden started as a PowerPoint. I started to love arranging flowers, and I will see later there's vegetable beds, and I used to raise vegetables. And when we first built this house, we went with a really simple grass, like mid-century garden. We didn't have a lot of trees. We didn't have budget for trees. We didn't have budget for much gardening. And this garden started much smaller, and I read Martha Stewart and Kevin Sharkey's book and was like, okay, if you want a cutting garden, these are the perennials you want to start with. And so I had my PowerPoint of perennials. I met my neighbor, had a gardener, Linda Gibson of Gibson. So she's a local gardener who I love. We now text all the time, and this garden would not happen without her. And we have such an amazing partnership. And working together, but a lot of the structure and the beauty and this garden is definitely a team effort, and a ton of credit to Linda and her team of people. So this side is really, we've learned what works here and what doesn't, like I was saying about the willows. Also, these are all willows that are hiding the deer fence. So you can't have a garden in the Hudson Valley because of deer. So these, and it takes years for these willows to grow, but they're Nijiki willows. They're Japanese willows. I think they're really beautiful. They change colors in the seasons. And so this is, on this side is plants that like water. Hydrangea, the key word hydro. They love water. So these are new, but they'll really grow. And this garden, what's amazing about it is all year, like from the time the crocuses come up till the final frost, different things are coming in and out. So there's always something to cut. And it looks beautiful as it is, but there's really, I'm constantly cutting from it. I have my snippers here, and just thinking about how to plant things that are really good for cutting and look really good as a garden. So as we go through, you see the tulips and daffodils. Linda and I made a mistake this year where I thought I was buying the tulips and daffodils and she thought she was. And we each bought 1,000. And so there were an outrageous amount of tulips and daffodils. The daffodils come back every year. The tulips don't always come back. I mean, I kind of like Martha Stewart. I think you see this picture in her book of, she has 10,000 daffodils. So I'm far away from that. So mirroring the columns here are these juniper. So you have the structure of the garden. Linda talks about that a lot. And you look at the flow and the low juniper here. These lilies, look at this gorgeous, this just came up. These yellow lilies. And the rabbits have been reproducing like bunny rabbits this year. I'm keeping it G-rated for Homeworthy, but the rabbits have been out of control. So we usually have these gorgeous hollyhocks everywhere, but they've been rabbit food. And let's see, these irises are so pretty. These hydrangeas are starting. This pink is called bee balm. You see, it attracts bees. I love having pollinators here because they pollinate everything. They bring the bees to the yard. So it just spreads, and really it's something that does quite well here. This catmint does really well, and it's really great for cutting. The lilies today are just out. Every day there's something different. Butterflies are here. This is my one Japanese maple this is its first year doing quite well. It often gets frost damage, but it's thriving this year. In fact, it's getting almost too big. And these are climbing geranium, which I just love because they're really low and they spread to the ground, and they're sort of wild. They're wild looking, quite beautiful. And so the path continues. Over here, these are all lilacs. And so there's this picture that Kevin Sharkey, who worked for Martha, has in this Martha Stewart book of this arrangement where he has like 5 different shades of lilac from white to dark purple. And a couple of years ago, my mom tragically passed away, and her favorite plant was lilac. And so I remember when I was a kid, I would go home and cut her lilacs, which was stealing from neighbors' lilac trees, but I don't know. Did I think that was a problem? Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, I brought her lilacs. I was rewarded, so it was good. So when she passed away, we planted this lilac grove here that just looks like normal bushes all year, but for like 2 or 3 weeks, it's absolutely beautiful colors of lilacs. And then you can begin to see the terrible view of the Catskill Mountains. And you can see a lot of the landscaping effort has been to hide the deer fence. So we can also wrap around the garden a lot of ornamental trees, more bee balm, the roses. The roses come and go. This is sort of the end of their first show for the summer. And so the garden really does have phases. And I would say this is like peak early summer. There's a book I love, a cookbook I love called 6 Seasons. And there's typically there's 4 seasons, but in his book, and I also think in the garden, there's 6 seasons because there's early summer, midsummer, and late summer. And I think this is early summer here. So we're seeing these allium are starting. We're seeing like the bee balm are at peak, and they'll keep flowering all summer. The hydrangea will flower all summer. These irises are so spectacular. Irises and lilies are in the same family. It's confusing. These are lilies. These are allium as well. I think they're so fun. They just have a sense of humor. These are Globemaster allium. They look very Dr. Seussian. They're early in. The peonies are done. Sedum do really well, which is sort of the succulent here. These are just came up today. Like every time you come up here, there's things coming and going. These are balloon flowers, which are so cool. You can see they are shaped like balloons. You can see all the bees coming to the bee balm yard. These roses will come back, but bugs be loving those roses. And I just added these pots this year for some structure. Then coming over here, I just got this bench, and it still has the tag on it. I mean, not the real tag. It was from this auction, this place in Connecticut. This husband and wife spent half of their year in France and half in Connecticut, and they have just amazing old garden items. And then they closed their shop and had an auction, and I had it on my calendar. And this is a 19th century Scottish bench, and I just think it's so beautiful in the auction. And then this is my friend Ben calls it my wagon wheel. And I always joke with my husband, we're going to renew our vows under here. And he's like, absolutely not. But it allows you to have climbing. And climbing things take a really long time. This is clematis, or as the British say, clematis. I love Monty Don. There's this show in the UK that's been on BBC for forever called Gardener's World. And it's very, very calming. And Monty Don just talks about his garden, and then they interview gardeners all over the UK. My husband calls it Xanax for bedtime. You watch them and they're like, today we're going to tour a clematis garden. And so this is clematis, as the British say. And we have 6 different kinds of clematis climbing, and they're doing quite well. They're just so beautiful. You can see this variety is here. This variety, they come and go all summer. This one sort of looks like a 60s bob or a wig. It's going, but more will come back. And when you think of flower arrangements, I like to think of fillers, thrillers, and spillers. And so this is a really good filler. And then over here, you can see the wig coming out of the lion. So I've just been adding, as I find antiques, when that was blooming, it looked like it was coming out of his head, which was cool. And then we have our climbing hydrangea over here. This will, you have to keep them off the house because they're very aggressive, but hopefully they bloom. We're still in June, so, and then this box is for herbs, and now we're gonna come over here to the pool patio, and I will show you that part of the outdoor space. So we'll walk from the crest, we call this the crescent garden, into the pool area. So the year before the pandemic, actually for years coming up here, friends would be like, this house would be way better with a pool. And we didn't have one. And a pool destroys everything. So this was a total mess, but we did the pool. And it has a waterfall edge. It's amazing to have a pool. And I really like the idea of the grass into the marble coping. So this is local marble as well. Into the same Najiki willows, into the terrible view. And then the patio, these pots are from a company called Bergs, and Bergs. They're designed in Denmark and made in Italy. I just think they have the most beautiful pots, and I love choosing the structure and the construction of the flowers. And this year we did oranges and purples. And so Linda really talks about each pot having a focal point, and I love the concept of fillers, spillers, and thrillers, and then color theory. And another thing I learned from Linda about making a pot like this is thinking about leaf structure. So if you have like it's the same with interiors. If you're going to do if you're going to mix patterns, do a large scale pattern and a small scale pattern. So like this is a small scale. This is small scale, like this is more large scale, and you see how the colors and textures, or like the longer shape playing against the other shapes, or how this fern sort of plays in here. So we do focal points, fillers, swillers, and spillers, thinking about color and thinking about broadleafs and narrowleafs next to each other, scale. And here's some more. I had a lot of fun I knew I had a good like carts of flowers when people were trying to shop off my cart at the nursery. I was like, those are mine, go find your own. These are super fun and cool and beautiful, and I'm so glad they flowered purple because I wasn't quite sure what the flower would look like when I got them in the spring. This is a magnolia, which is actually doing quite well. And then these are forget-me-nots. When my husband's cousin Priscilla, who was a total character from Southie Boston, passed away, she had organized her entire funeral, and part of it was everyone got a packet of forget-me-nots, and we actually originally planted them in there, but they've made their way here. So every year somehow Priscilla's forget-me-nots find their way into the garden somewhere. I just finished this. Like I said, I love upholstery, and I think it can make such a difference. These are just RH chairs we've had forever, but I just finished this, making these. I love a contrast piping, and I think they look so chic. This is a pillow with really old fabric that I found at the shop in the Lower East Side. A woman named Paula Rubenstein. She has a great shop of vintage fabrics, and this is a Schumacher stripe that is beautiful. These are not, I mean, it is sort of tricky here to have, because you have the fire, and then having drinks here is it's not the most conducive for food and having a fire, but it looks pretty. And then we have the outdoor speakers here for our party house. And then I just did these as well, which is sort of the inspo. Well, the inspo for this was Yves Saint Laurent's Rue Babylon in Paris. He has these gorgeous outdoor green upholstered chairs. And then there's also some Slim Aarons photos from Italy in the 60s and 70s. It has this gorgeous like white and green cabana stripes. And then here, this fabric is so pretty. It has the navy blue and green. And then, and we have, having light and music here is really nice in the outside. And then made these as well, which have the blue with the same white stripe. For the, and sort of here you see like these are like, you know, this is mixing cedar and these really utilitarian chairs that are from DWR. and made them my own with upholstery and accessories, I guess. But then you see these fun, like, old French urns on the pool, and more Berg's pots. Like, they're just so beautiful. So now we're gonna go from this pool deck to the cutting garden. Join me. All right, so now we're gonna tour the cutting garden, which is 6 raised beds that originally it was all vegetables, and I would miss a week here and it would go absolutely crazy. And I can actually buy really great vegetables, but it's harder and more expensive to buy really great flowers. So this has become a mostly flower with some vegetables. You can see the lettuces here. These tomatoes, actually, this is the first year I've grown tomatoes from seed because I have a greenhouse. So started them as little seeds, started the basil as seed as well. And I like putting basil by the tomato because the flowering of the basil brings the pollinators to the tomatoes. That's all different kinds of basil. This is mint, which is a weed. It's also really great for arrangements because it lasts a long time. And these are just cosmos that I think are really great summer flowers. This is going to be a ton of zinnia of all different colors. One trick when you first plant the zinnia right before, right when they start, the same with zinnia and cosmos and dahlias even, you snip the middle from the top plant and they spread out. So, they're flowering a little late because I snipped them all, but they're going to be really wide and they'll produce twice as many flowers that way. These are just wild poppies that, just have grown quite well here. So we kept them. We have some other stuff coming in behind them. And then this was another poppy that made its way here, which is so beautiful. And these are all dahlias from tubers that each stake is a dahlia. So you don't water the dahlias until they come through the ground. But these are like weird, rare dahlias that I can't wait to see what they look like because this is my first year growing them. So let's go from the raised bed cutting garden up to the greenhouse. So this is the greenhouse, which is something I just put in last year. So it started as, let's have a greenhouse. And so I found this beautiful greenhouse that was mid-century. It was the style of the house. And I thought, we'll just lay a cement floor and we'll build a greenhouse. But nothing's ever that easy because the land was really slanted. So we needed to have a retaining wall. And so I decided to use local bluestone for the retaining wall, and I was really into French decor, especially French garden decor. So it is a mid-century structure with a lot of French decorative items and this path. So it's like a small walled garden here, and it gets really, really hot. That's why they call it a greenhouse. And so this is our lavender, which is the first year of the lavender, and it is thriving here. And then nasturtium, or the edible orange flower. Again, purple and orange is such a nice combo. This was from that store that I mentioned. This is a faux bois, which means fake wood, like an old French bench, and it looks like fake wood. And this fountain is 19th century from Paris, and it just was like the right scale for this wall. And it's actually run by a garden pump. So we built like I said, this was supposed to be a really simple greenhouse, but it never is. And so this has just a pond pump. We built a concrete water storage beneath it, and the water goes into it and recirculates through. But it looks like when you go to like Italy or France and you just have the running water. Don't tell. And the thing about building walls like this is the snakes really love it. And I know they're just garter snakes, but I like it when I don't see them. So I don't see them today. Maybe we can get some wildlife footage, but none here. And these are 1940s French deco outdoor chairs. I love 1940s decor. I love 1940s French decor because it was like right before mass manufacturing. So you still have, like, they look very modern, but they also still look very old fashioned. I love the patina of them. I was so thrilled to find these. And then these are 3 ornamental apple trees and my solar lighting. So as we go into the greenhouse, you can't really have much in the greenhouse in the summer except succulents. And so I've been growing succulents. These are French cafe tables and lots of Berg's pots as well with a pencil cactus. I love this succulent tray. It's really, really warm in here. Look at this guy. This is another Berg's pot that I think is just so beautiful. And these cactus, I think cactuses are camp. These came mail order, and you just sort of, they came chopped and you just put them in the dirt and they thrive. And I think this is really fun. I love the feet of this column. I would guess this is like 1940s if I had to guess. I could totally be wrong. This is a pickling jar that is great for here. I love the scale of it. These are old, sort of more mid-century, but I love how beat up and patina that is. These are old French, like I said, French cafe tables. More succulents, my dried hydrangeas from last year that were too pretty to throw away, and then lots of fans because you can never have enough fans. Actually, something cool about this is these windows are tied to a thermostat, and when it gets past a certain temperature, which is always, they automatically open, which I thought was a really cool feature here. So let's get out of the greenhouse and we'll go back to the garden to cut some flowers to make an arrangement, and then we'll finish touring the house. Hey, lady. All right. So, what I normally do at this point is arrange them into similar colors. So, like, technically, you're supposed to like hydrate the flowers before you arrange them, which I did for some before that I have from arrangements from yesterday, but with these, because they really will drink a lot of water initially, and it's amazing when you grow flowers versus like buying them, how much longer they last. So I like to, so you want to clean the stems to make sure you don't want any dirt in the stems, or in the water, I mean. So I usually take out the bottom stems, and then these might fall over. Let's see, I'll put them in here. The heavier bus, that's good. And then these clematis will all go in there. Oh, there's another one of these guys. Then we'll do the clematis. The clematis and the geranium that I cut they're like peas. They like to hang on to things, so they're always trying to hold on to you and each other. I think when I'm up here, I get into especially when I'm arranging flowers or walking around the garden or doing stuff outside, I'm in like what they call a flow state, which is your mind is clear. And I have the kind of mind that always likes to be doing something. And oftentimes that thing is work, but up here to be able to just, go into this flow state and do something I love. So I think having a home where I can do that is really important. And, when I talk to the clients I've worked with around figuring out how have a nice home or a home that they love. Back in the, when American interior design started, and I think it really sort of got big in the early 20th century, interior designers were hired. It was unreachable for most people, and a lot of their job was to teach young people, very wealthy young people, how to live, like how to live in a house, how to live as an adult. And I think a modern interpretation of that is an interior designer can help people live better. And I think one of the ways of like living a good life is having a home that works for you, and having a home that can, provide things like the ability to arrange flowers, or living beautifully. And I think having flowers, whether they're from your garden or from a deli, having things that are alive in your house, like brings a home to life. Especially, like, I love this house. When we first get here from the city, there's no flowers usually, or flowers have died, and it just feels very, very different. And so, certainly home to me is having things alive. And it's not only flowers, but it's even like produce, growing vegetables, having just things that are alive here. So I think that's really important to me. All right, so the flowers are conditioning, and I really think the purple will look good with this orange old marble deco vase. And this faucet I love natural materials. It's unlacquered brass, and it's just so beautiful. It feels so good in your hand. It's the Henry faucet from Waterworks, and that has the beautiful detail there. I just love it. This is a pot from a ceramicist up here, Paula Greif, who makes the coolest ceramic pottery. And this was from an auction house up here called Stair. So the first thing I like to do is I want to create a base of structure. So one of the challenges is making sure everything stands up. And you can either use tape or a flower frog. I like to try to do it naturally, especially with a vase this shape. So one way to do that is to think about having like your the just leafy things first. So these are cherry, like pieces from a cherry tree, and I think that deep purple will look nice with the light purples. And then I have a little bit of privet, which is a bush that grows like a weed up here. So I'm gonna take these cherries, look at the height, maybe like a little lower than that. So I hold it up to how high I want it to be. The tip of that one is bugs, got it. That's the thing, when you buy stuff from the florist, generally bugs haven't eaten it, but we don't have that here. So I'll strip all the leaves, because you don't want leaves in the water because it makes it dirty. And then you always want to do a fresh cut for when you're putting it in. I like odd numbers. Like, I think a trio looks nice to start. So pretty much that height, and maybe I'll change it, but see how I hold it to the counter height, put it in, and then I'll start to make a structure with the stem so I can arrange into it. So start there, and then the privet is really nice to have as a structure because it's a nice sturdy stem. Don't want the leaves in there, maybe about that high. I like this little detail there, so cut it that high. With things that are stemmy, it'll last longer if you sort of break open the stem so it gets more exposure to water, or like smash it, then peel. Really try to not get any leaves close to the bottom of the vase. It just looks better without it. So I should have cut those off. So that might be a little tall. That looks good. We could do one more piece of privet. Just take it from here. That would be good. All right, maybe a little bit more. Maybe some of this sedum that I got, it might be too short. So let's see if this one, that might be a little interesting to have. The color interesting? No, it doesn't work. So this, I might do a little more of that cherry and a little more privet. You could always take it out. It doesn't work. Take that. Sorry, this one looks better. All the flowers are from the garden, which isn't, that's really the goal, to try all year round to have stuff to use. And you can get creative too with, some of these are just shrubs, but they have interesting leaves. And so if you can work with any kind of flower, even in the winter, using evergreens and just trying to take it from the property. And then, so now we have sort of a nice base of, then maybe this would be a little interesting to have a different structure of leaf as well, because they're a little more exotic looking and they can pop up like that. And then we can put the flowers around them, a little shorter. And those are sort of on their own interesting. Do one more of those. Love the shape of those. As I grew up and my mom always had flowers. She didn't really arrange flowers, but I just sort of self-taught, and I read, different books and followed different YouTubers on learning to do flower arrangements. And it's just, I love it because it sort of incorporates all the skills of interior design, of color and scale. And it's, like I said, it has that flow state. But I've just trial and error and then lots of book reading. When I'm into something, I will go deep, and I'll show you all my interior or my flower books, and just watching people and following Instagram of amazing florists. And it's mostly trial and error, and lots of times they go bad and you just redo them, and that's okay. It doesn't really matter. It's not like I'm selling them for a wedding or anything. We have the base of the colors here. Now we want to get some like focal points, and I really want it to focus on the clematis here, which I think are so amazing. So we have this really big guy and unruly guy. It might be the wrong size vase, but it has all these really cool things that might be really neat coming down the side, like sort of like that. So we're gonna have to clean out the extra ones, which is hard to do. But I always have like extra small containers that can use the and sometimes these end up being the best arrangements, like just so for the extras that are small, so you don't waste them. This guy, that might be a little too tall, shorten it one. The thing about flower arranging is spilling water. You have to not worry about it, because it always happens. Let's see if that looks like coming out here. Oh, into the fire, perfect. Or up here. That looks really cool. See, all these guys are growing on each other. Come on. Let's get the leaves out of here. They grow so weirdly. So this would look good as sort of like going down the side over here. And then this one over here. It's really good to like turn, to like keep turning your, sometimes I do this on a lazy Susan. The other thing that I think is important is to have something like weird. And I think these are sort of like weird and unexpected, but they're in the color. So just to have a different shape of something like a little strange and unexpected, like put this, cut it at an angle, and then get that guy in there. And this one has really nice height, but it's all in the color family. We have the clematis at the bottom. A little extras popped over here. And then I think we can use some more like pops of purple. So we'll use these. Oh, actually these still will be amazing. beautiful. Let's see. Getting there. And now we have a really nice base that's like holding it down. So when I put any flower in, I can sort of go anywhere I want it to because we built that base really well with lots of different flowers. Maybe one more stilby and then some of these over here. And then you don't want to go too far. So it's always that balance. Like, is it better with one less? And I think the tension of this hanging off the edge and almost touching would be really nice. Cut it off. There we go. That did it. And then we'll put some of these in it. Pop some purple, light purple. So this one actually turned out, so they don't always. I'm pretty happy with that. It's like Coco Chanel said, take one thing away, but I just won't go too far that I have to. So there it is. Should we put it in the middle of the table? And Sister's joining us for this part of the tour. Sister is the newest member of our family. She's a 2-year-old min pin, which we joke, she's a Doberman in the dryer. We had a dog for a long time, and we didn't have a dog for 3 years, and our friend works in dog rescue and was like, she's the perfect dog, you have to have her. And we do, and she's a real sweetheart. She's named after Sister Parrish, which is a deep cut for interior design history nerds. And my husband is a theater professor, so his version is she's like a Tennessee Williams character, sister. So we made a mess in the kitchen, but I can show it to you. This is the kitchen, and because it's part of the main space, you know, I like kitchens that feel like part of the house, and it doesn't feel like totally separate from the house. And in an older house, I feel like it's nice to have a kitchen that doesn't feel like it's from like a, you know, a furniture show, like a kitchen showroom. This kitchen does really, I think, feel like the rest of the house. I really wanted a navy blue kitchen and finding the right navy blue. This was actually made by Mennonites locally at a wood shop. They did an absolutely amazing job. And this marble is from Vermont. It's called Danby marble. I love it. I love having a lamp in the kitchen, just because a kitchen shouldn't feel like a showroom. It's just like part of the rest of the house. And so I feel like that makes it feel more tied to the rest of the house. And because this is so open, it really is part of the overall living space. These lamps, or these lights, are also from Niche Modern, and I really like how they're slightly different, but they complement the ones over the dining chair. And having a big country sink is really, really nice here. The coolest feature of the kitchen, I think, was one time we got here and the appliances were installed and the cabinetry was on top of it, and I called the architect and said, Leslie, I think we forgot to put the handle on the dishwasher. And she said, no, just knock on it. I said, what do you mean knock on it? She said, knock the dishwasher twice. So I did, and it opens, which is such a strange feature that I never asked for, but that is the dishwasher we got. So it has not broken yet. So that's a nice feature. And the refrigerator is built in, which I think is really nice, because now I'm on my cookbooks. I love this cookbook, 6 seasons, all the different seasons of the garden. I'm a huge Ottolenghi fan. I love Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, which is such a great cookbook. Cook 90 is my friend David Tamarkin's cookbook that he wrote a lot of in this house. And then Alice Waters, icon. And then we have sort of the mirroring of it, which is the pantry, the very organized pantry. I think you can cook almost anything if I love just going to the grocery store without recipes and just getting whatever produce is there and whatever protein is there. And then if you have sort of a full pantry, you can make anything. And so I love cooking here. My husband likes to go out to eat at this one restaurant where we're up here. I love it too, Gaskin's, and they inspire me to cook, but otherwise I'm just very happy cooking every meal. Coming in here to the primary bedroom, I like for a room to have one or two main colors and then two more secondary colors, and you can really see here this Turkish rug leads the color story here, which is sort of a black, red, black, brown, red, and cream. So there's a lot of red here. Bedside tables are these amazing mid-century 4-drawer bedside tables that I love. This is from Les Indiennes, which does Indian block print. So it's actually in Warren Street in Hudson, where they make amazing block print. And I love Ralph Lauren Home, so the pillows are from Ralph Lauren Home. And I glue gunned that trim on that. That's a Ralph Lauren Home fabric as well. This lamp is 1940s French deco, which is so fun. I love the feet, the deco feet. And we have our mid-century chair here, Italian, that's from 1980. Red, just really red oil painting on canvas. My husband's book, which in my photo shoots of the interiors I've worked on, I always have his book as well. And he jokes it's like the Hirschfeld Nina. So the artist Hirschfeld would always have his Nina, his daughter's name, hidden in his artwork. So Broadway Bodies is my Nina. This photo is our friend Julia, who is an amazing photographer, and she worked for years at Diner in Williamsburg, Andrew Tarlow's restaurant. We used to go to Diner and Marlowe and Sons all the time, and I just love her photos. And she just had a book of photography that has a lot of her wonderful photographs. And then this piece has traveled with me. This was actually in the office of my company. That is a apartment building in Buenos Aires. So it is hard to tell what it is, but it's a apartment building with the air conditioners, and you see, I love the how many stories are contained within each of those windows and how people have the air conditioning on different parts. So what home means to me is a place to express yourself, a place to have friends and family feel welcome and feel like they're having I love hospitality, and I love cooking a meal for people, sharing my home with them, our home with them, a place that it's a place to, I guess, give back to yourself, to recharge, and a place to also give and share with other people. Thank you for coming, Homeworthy.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.